Hello everyone. Dear friends, nice to see you again. Nice to be with you. Very happy to continue this fantastic week we started 2 days ago on the topics of transdisciplinary in arts. So I'm very glad once again to introduce my friend Christian Ungureanu, who is a very active member of Ciret, one of the four co-organizers of this Congress. Christian is artist, coordinator of this wonderful symposium. I thank him again for the huge work he's done to prepare this session, to have a strong and long discussions with all the people he invited. And I strongly recommend the audience to see the presentations of 2 days ago who have be done on Wednesday and who are now available online. So I will be not longer than I am now. And Christian, I'm very glad now to give you the microphone to introduce and start this symposium altogether. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Florent Pasquier, the actual president of Ciret, International Center of Researches and Transdisciplinary Studies from Paris, France, one of the main organizers of this third International Congress of Transdisciplinary, among with the universities from Mexico City. And we are all happy and honored, including me, to take part into this third Congress of Transdisciplinarity, who is going to be online. We know why, online on this time, this month, but is programmed, scheduled for November 21 this year to take part normally, face to face in Mexico City, and we all hope that all planet, all people are waiting to meet in this way directly and to come back to normality and to our natural way of making good things. But till then, we are happy to have this incredible possibility of modern age, of technology. We are grateful to science and to technology for that, for this wonderful possibility of continuing our activities in this way on internet. The first guest in the artistic pole of the Congress tonight is a researcher who came from Peru, from South America, but she lives in France. She lived also in Mexico, but she lives now in France. And if you allowed me, I will introduce her short biography for you. And after that, definitely, I will give her the microphone. Margarita de Vivero Zuber is her name. Focuses her research on human ecological education through the perceptive discovery of the webs of reciprocity between individuals, society, and nature. She was born in Peru, where she discovered the privileged function of the body in learning through the practice of meditation, music, and dance. In Paris, she studied sculpture, choral singing, and Spanish literature and civilization, BA in Paris Sorbonne Nouvelle University. She's a teacher and psychoeducator at the Institut Catholique de Paris. Somato psychoeducator at the Universidade Fernando Pessoa in Porto, and trainer at the DU Sorbonne Paris Nord. She designs training programs in educational and training institutions focused on educating perception and metacognition in order to develop sensitivity, awareness, and creativity. During her master's degree in perceptual psychoeducation at UFP Porto, she accompanied a Willems music education project, allowing her to formalize a somatic psychoeducational methodology to accompany training and an approach to music education through the sensible body as a means of accessing to knowledge. She accompanies people undergoing personal and professional transition through manual support, gestural and verbal guidance, Denis Bois method, founder of fascia therapy. This is her topic, in fact, the nucleus of her topic, and we are very curious to hear. As a member of Ciret Research Laboratory, she carries out researches on interviewing of health and creativity with physicians, dancers, musicians, and actors in Mexico, and Peru. She develops pedagogical resources to foster creative involvement in environmental change, collapsology, resilience, and Latin American resistance. She signs in Quechua Choir of Paris, which aims to spread the Quechua culture. Margarita, we invite you to tell us about your topic.
Thank you very much, Christian, and thank you for this invitation. I would like to thank also Julieta Aida, Laurent Pasquier, Basarab Nicolescu, and all the organizers of this Third World Congress of Transdisciplinarity. And thank you all for being with us. So I'm going to share the slides. Yes. Okay. Yes. So the purpose of my talk today is to share with you an integrative support and training program I conceived in order to favor personal and professional renewal. So today, I will focus on a somatic psychoeducational approach I implemented to support people during their personal and professional transformations along their training process. During my master's degree on perceptual psychoeducation, I developed this integrative methodology in order to support the innovation project of the private school Musique en Mouvement based on Wieland's music education. So this discipline, perceptual psychoeducation, is based on a new paradigm, developing an unexplored inner perception to access an embodied intelligence, source of self-renewal and potentiality. So this discipline has enriched my research for bridging art and science. Let me see here. Oops. Yes. So art has always been for me a way of expressing a living force, and this force that seeks to reveal itself, and also as a means of knowledge. So the artistic processes that prevailed the framework to make emerge this force for me. But my question when I became an educator was, by what means can I help contact this inner force in order to renew our daily life in science? So in other words, I would say, to quote Nicolescu, how to contribute to an integral education of a human being, bringing to light our creative potentialities, leading to the elimination of the tensions menacing life in our planet. So let's see now, what are the transdisciplinary perspectives that promote a creative process in education? So to begin with, the UNESCO report on education for the 21st century, shared by Delors, defined 4 pillars to build a new kind of education. In here, you can see, yes, and Niculescu highlights the trans relation between the 4 principles. So an education that can take into account all the dimensions of the human being. A transversal education that develops knowledge as well as being. Moran here emphasizes the importance of developing complex thought in education, a thought that has the skill for intertwining different elements in a harmonious way. For Niculescu, expanding levels of perceptions allows us to access different levels of reality, of consciousness. By reintegrating maybe perception in its etymological sense, that refers us to sensation, to the science of the sensible. As he reminds, the hidden third cannot be thought, but it can be perceived. So this research for including this spiritual or living force leans in mediation. What kind of mediation facilitates connecting the sensory and the reflexive experience? So this brings us to the foundations of my practice. Since my practice is based on a new paradigm, the paradigm of the sensible of Bois. And it is founded on the unity of our organism, which differs from the so-called anatomical and mind-body separation. So Professor Bois' main discovery was the role of the inner movement of the fascia. As you can see here, it's called also conjunctive tissue. So that intertwines the body and the psyche. It's a source of information and transformation. The sensible is a somatic space that can be sensed. And the contact with the sensible body as a mediator of knowledge transforms our representations, our actions, from the enrichment of our perceptions. So what is this sensible body? It is an unexplored organ. It's an organ of reception and information, and it discriminates and interacts with our environment. But this perception is not spontaneous, and it differs from our 5 senses. Nevertheless, there have been researchers in Ciret that have highlighted that relationship to the sensible body, and it is educable. So Professor Bois created an academic discipline, perceptual psychoeducation, that has protocols and practical tools that allow to learn, to feel, to think, and make sense of one's individual and collective experience in contact with a sensorial intelligence. This inner movement, it animates our matter, the matter of our body, and it carries the self-regulating force. So the approach, it's a phenomenological and experiential that develops high levels of perception and cognition in order to initiate a process of self-knowledge and transformation while learning. So thanks to Dr. Guimberteau, we are able to see some of the pictures of his film Interior Architectures, the possibility of making the invisible visible. And So I'm going to share my screen, but I prefer to go out because, let's see, I need to change just a minute. Okay, here is, okay, I let you discover this for those who don't know what is the fascia.
These fibrillar architectures and their microvascular spaces, lubricated with glycoaminoglycans, are indeed major players in the choreography of this ballet. From now on, we can account for the anatomical structures differently. From the skin to the muscle, from the tendon to the periosteum, the body is one and has the same multifibrillar architecture, possessing constant intra- and interfibrillar movements with different cellular and morphological specifications. The cell belongs to this system. It is this system. It is in this system. From the DNA helix to the cytoskeleton, including the links to the integrines and neighboring cells, everything is in continuity, everything is connected, everything moves to fit, everything moves and always comes back to its previous position. Everything moves within the tissue continuity. The body seems to be an ideal mesh made of fibers, fibrils, microfibrils and microvascular spaces with a structural rationalism, allowing us to associate molecular physiochemical biodynamics with quantum physics. Therefore, living form can be described and interpreted. A real structural ontology can be worked out through a basic functional unit, which is the microvacuole, the microvolume responsible for the form and the dynamics.
Okay. Of course, I invite you to see this fantastic film, but now I'm going to continue the presentation. Let's see. No, I came out. Yeah, no, you see it? Eh? Yes. Okay. Then we put the full screen on the technology. So I would like to share with you an exercise, if you like, of course, because I really appreciate making theory and practice meet. So if you wish, I invite you to just feel if you are comfortably seated. You can breathe. And if you like, you can even close your eyes. It's not necessary, but as you feel. So I invite you to listen to the presentation going on, not only with your ears, but also with your body. The idea is actually to listen as much with your body as with your ears. And while the talk goes on, you can come back to this tuning of your mind and of your body and just to rely on it. So we go into now, let's move to the integrative program itself. So I conceived and implemented this program to respond to the call for support of the innovation project of the private school Musique en Mouvement in Paris, which is based on Willem's music education. And Willems is part of the current of active methods that appeared in the middle of the 20th century. So I'll just give a brief introduction to the field and context. So we were around 400 people. There we were in the actors, the players of the project, but we centered on the teachers and the students. And Isabel founded the school willing to contribute to the integral development of the human being through Wieland's music methods. So following the school expansion, she was willing to find support. So she requested an innovation project follow-up in this context. And the results of my studies are focused on Isabel. But this will shed light on the systemic effects on her personal, her professional, social, and institutional renewal. And at the same time, we see what is the effects on the other members of the project. So I opted for a systemic paradigm based on an open project because this encouraged the involvement of all the players and at different moments of the project, indeed. And just have a look also, because we had a dialogue between our approaches, Willems and Bois approach. And this dialogue really allowed us to revisit the foundations of both disciplines, and they enrich us very much. So let's just shed light on some of the common purposes, because both join the transdisciplinarity subject, the transdimensionality of the subject, and they consider all the aspects, all the dimensions of the person, from the body, the physiological, the anatomic, all the dimensions. And I can maybe sum up the ontological dimension by phrasing Pander's "become what you are while learning." And so let's see some of the elements representing the unity. The uniting thread is, of course, our body. Is often ignored, especially in learning process. So inner listening and movement are essential to learn a new musical and organic language. Both have to develop this possibility to learn a new language, a new dialogue. That's the most important. And as for the spiritual dimension, body is the place where nature and the spirit meets. And the transversal education, as we see here, I hope you see here, this transversal education serves this same aim. So I just want, okay. It's also, mediation is also an art of balance. And as Pastor Arvi Nicolescu reminds us, it's an equilibrium between analytic intelligence, feeling, and the body. This approach, so our approach is rooted in this sensible body. So to be able to create the conditions, there are artificial conditions to get to the natural condition of the human being. So let's see now the most important fact and the discovery of Danny Bois is this sensorial intelligence. And we can see what are the components. So you see here, we have the body. And there's all this process going on. So I'm going to use the key data collected from Isabel to relate this central intelligence. So to see what are the testifying of each process. So the body is we can get in touch with the conscious relationship with this sensible body, because it gives access to our state of the moment. And as it is, as she explains, sometimes not tension, stress. And at the same time, simultaneously, there's, by contrast, there's a possibility that allows the person to witness a new dynamic that is connected to this new perceptual experience. And then you have something that's like progressive. And then we get to the pre-reflexive intelligence, since a sense emerges that is not necessarily formulated. It is something that is that guides and transforms our actions, or especially our representations, and this is have an action before becoming reflexive. And there's also a relation component, and it is the awareness of this phenomena that had an impact on the person, in this case on Isabel, and the cognitive, affective, and also on her relational life. So just some indications about the tools, the framework of experience. As you can see, the main objective is to progressive empower the subject and context his potentialities, and is to discover her uniqueness and singularity. And this is not something that is stable. It's something that is always in movement, like a potentiality. And the special conditions, it's important to have at the beginning an extra daily conditions of silence, slowness. And thanks to this, we can really develop the possibility of sensing the process of this sensory intelligence, and in feeling the unfolding phenomena that are going on. And so the person, like the facilitator, the mediator, has an important role in the sense that it is the sensible body who is the mediator, but we can facilitate through manual help, an introspection. It's like a meditation. And there's also a sensory gymnastic and in a dialogue between the person, and also a writing to have a trace, so that this can lead to a new understanding. So each tool serves the same purpose, that is to develop not only this perception, but also to develop the understanding of this new language that is also the passage through a physiological pattern of in ourselves. Okay, so I get now to the results, and the results show once again that a renewed relationship to oneself allows to better empathize with others. But in this case, empathy is grounded on an organic place that can be shared with others. So, as she says, through silence, I feel bridged to a force inside me, which is a force that I draw from to teach, play music, and communicate. So now let's see from Isabel's new behaviors and operational skills as teacher and director. What was highlighted was the empowerment, the decision-making, especially as director, and the awareness of adjusting her gestures and at the real time of the action. And her practice also, of course, impact the students and the teachers and the parents. Well, so she always starts, even now, in this, there's, as you see, it's a picture was taken 2 or 3 weeks ago. So just to testify that she always begins the lessons with an exercise of silence and slow movements that bring really a kind of peace and attention, not only for her, but also for her students. And so something that is really new for her, or any way that she had developed, is to be possible, the possibility of simultaneously be able to transmit, to listen, and to share the music without totally going out of herself. No, so that was very important also. And there's something important, as I shared with you. It is difficult to be at the same time in our body, in our mind, in our feelings. So this, of course, this is a real exercise, and the tools serve this aim. No? So the tuning and the attractive reciprocity, there's a new term, because as I said, the empathy is a different kind of empathy, because there's a possibility in the moment. It's a real exercise, and it is possible to share a common perceptive experience of the sensible and of its effects, and these really bring people together. And this also have an impact on the learning process, since the active musical approach, the films, links the awareness of the gestures, and it allows them to embody the technical aspects through these different tools, coming back to the sensitive body. And it's possible also to be more free and natural, and to cover the music in a real singular way, and not only reproducing it, but really to really cover the music, no? And that's something very important. We worked with the teachers to prepare this each concert, but it was interesting also to have the evaluations of the students, especially the teenagers. So in addition to impacting the musical dimension, creativity, and technicality, it also develops, especially for teenagers, self-confidence. And it allows them to explore their singularity, and especially without comparison themselves, because it's not a very easy moment for them. It's an age that's difficult. So there's an aspect often ignored that it's important, is that sometimes young people, or not only young people, but when they play the music, they adopt postures that are wrong postures, that often are rooted, and they cause tensions and pains, impacting emotional and intellectual circles. So for us, it was very important to work also in this. Yeah. So I'm getting to the end, because I also wanted to share her new posture of as director, since, as she said, it allows her to have a participative and more human managerial style. And she felt also that she could really share with the teachers, and she could rely also on them and on all the parents and not only the parents, because now she has a partnership also with a town hall and the Conservatoire de Paris, and they have a new board, and so she feels really that she is able to share her aim. So I just want to give some conclusions. I think I have just 1 or 2 minutes. It's okay. This program, I just want to say, is to favor personal, professional, institutional, and spiritual renewal, can be successfully rolled out to serve all kinds of education. And it's also possible to reintroduce into our daily life art by renewal and inner self-contact. The approach to education is the basis of a sustainable education seen through the perception of the sensible body that we experience our ontological belonging to nature. Ecology plays an important role for our planet as it does for our own existence. So I'm pleased to know that teachers now, they really question the place of the body in teaching, but I hope that training institutions encourage the accompaniment of the person while they have this training. And I would like to end with a note of hope, as Pastor Nicolas reminds us in his manifesto. Let us remember what has already been said. Homo sui transcendentalis is not a new man, but a man who is born again. Homo sui transcendentalis is the true natural state of the human being. Well, I just want to thank some of the people who had joined me in my journey, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Margarita de Vivero Zuber, for this really interesting and complex and provocative somehow modalities of teaching, which are new somehow, comparing to the classical way of teaching and the distance between the teacher and the class, the students, and but it's at the same time very ancient because remind us the very ancient formulas of teaching and of staying together to the kids on one side and the adults, the teacher, and this organic way of learning together, as you pointed out. Exactly. It's not only the kids which are growing and learning, but also the teacher who change himself, change his consciousness and his mind and his perception of himself and of the kids and of the world during the process, the pedagogical process. And I think this is really interesting, and we need to take, as you evoke at the beginning of the presentation, the model from nature, from human body, as you evoke, from the distribution and the elasticity of skin and or of the muscle tissues, and which reminds me, as visual artist, reminds me of Sagrada Familia. Quickly, I was thinking for the architectural, very strong structure of and fluid somehow and beauty, but very resistant structure of nature, what you evoke in the skin and in the muscle cells. My question should be, if I am allowed to put a question as a moderator, it is available not only for art teaching, but also for the other material, for mathematics or chemistry, or this way of approaching?
Yes, of course, that's what important. Yes, it's important to bear in mind that it's all kind of projects. And well, especially my specialty is Spanish. I teach Spanish, but I also train teachers for foreign language. So it's possible to, of course, to be able not only in the class but also with the teachers, and we use this for teachers trainers for whatever. You can just begin. It's very simple. You can begin for a moment, a quiet moment, and you also can introduce some slow movements, because you know it's very hard for the students to stay the whole day seated. For me, it was impossible.
Thank you. Another question from the panelists, if we have.
Can I maybe ask quickly? Do you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yes. So thanks a lot, Margarita, for a really interesting presentation. I have maybe a short question. If you can tell us more about how this approach, which you presented today, how does it work with, and how does it understand proprioception? You know, the sense of a self, and the I'm sure you would have a lot more to tell us about that, about the importance of proprioception.
Okay, yes, I couldn't explain a lot, but it's different from the 5 senses, but it's also different from proprioception. Because, you know, Danny was an osteopath, and he could really compare. We have the proprioception, it's natural, they're in our muscles, so that we know when we move. But this is really another kind of perception, because you have to learn to feel the specific characteristics of the fascia. It has a very slow movement that can be 15 seconds for each movement. So you really have to feel also there has an amplitude, they have directions. So when you move, you can feel that it's not only your body outside, but it's something that can give you another kind of it's like another it's something that really relies in between your mind and your body, and this gives you another kind of not tension, but I can't find the word right now.
If you allow me, Margarita, it's a sort of consciousness different than the mind. You mean, I think.
Well, that's it.
Okay.
That we have always we put all the importance in our mind, and even we know that there's things happening in our brain, and we can see it, but that doesn't mean that everything is in our mind. It's our brain, but we can sense before we think. Before thinking. But what is very important is that this is a perception that our mind can't represent. So that's the difficulty. That's why I wanted to show you the picture, because there's something that we just can't imagine with our mind, because we don't know it until we really have an experience. And this experience changes our representations. But before feeling it, it's difficult to represent. It's impossible. And that's, for me, that's the main point that really impact me, because it's part of the hidden third. It's like an echo. For me, it's like an echo of the hidden third. One of the echoes.
Thank you, Margarita. If there's another question from the panelists. Okay, if you allowed me, before passing to stay in our program, to complete my observation and my comments, that reminds me of Gurdjieff psychology, what you present us of this observing ourselves, observing the mind as is thinking, doing rational things, as we watch an actor on the stage. So we are the director of the actor, which is the mind. So we are not only the mind, as you pointed out. This is the fascinating, and I recommend in this way also the books of Gurdjieff and of Peter Ouspensky or Jean de Salzman, all his Nikolai de Hartmann, the composer, also have all these practices in relation with these realities of the levels of body, and where mind and rational thinking is only one level. And we use the modern and contemporary, we use to think that we identify with the mind. And we believe so much in only in this reality, and for that we are suffering and keeping our potential to quite a low level. And it's very interesting for that what you present us, this type of experiments of pedagogy, and we all hope that many people will develop this type of practices and experiment to make the pedagogical process, the learning process in school and in universities more natural, more efficient, and more beauty for all of us, for kids, for teachers, and for parents, for society, and for everybody.
Yes, and it is possible. That's what is so, I mean, that's important to just to know that this exists. Huh? Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Margarita.
Thank you all.
Thank you. And we have to invite now the next artist and transdisciplinary researcher in our program of this second day of conferences organized in the artistic pole. And is the Romanian this time artist, visual artist, and professor at the National Georgianescu National University of Arts, Adrian Stoleriu. He was born in 1983. He's a visual artist, as I said, member of the Union of Visual Artists in Romania, Iași branch, and Dean of the Faculty of Visual Arts and Design, even he's very young. And at the National University of Arts Georgianescu in Iași, Romania. His artistic activity focuses on capturing and valuing the spiritual and religious aspects of contemporary society, as well on the identity dilemmas imposed by current socio-cultural environments. His works have been presented in numerous personal or collective visual arts exhibitions. Among the most important such events are landscapes, named Landscapes in Milan, Italy in 2019, Babylon at the Gallery Aparte in Iași in 2017, Dialogue with the Sacred, International Visual Art Exhibition has 10 years in 2021, this cycle of exhibition named Dialogue with the Sacred. Sacred Art Gallery happens in Sacred Art Gallery of the Church Assumption of Mother of God in Iași, in Quartier Galata, as Galata Quartier in Istanbul and ex-Constantinople. We have a quarter in Iași named Galata. A very particular short parenthesis art gallery dedicated to sacred art at the basement, at the catacomba of a church, of a normal church in the city of Iași, and it's a really interesting phenomenon. Then the exhibition Romanian too, at the Baroque Schlossel in Misterbach, Austria. Kunst aus Rumänien, again in Misterbach, Austria in 2012. Sacred, Old and New at the Nicolae Tonița Art Gallery in Iași. Adrian, we invite you to
Thank you very much, Christian, for this very friendly introduction. First of all, I want to say I'm very glad to be here with you tonight, and I want to say hello to everyone. It's a very good opportunity to change ideas and to let us know everyone with our ideas in a very transdisciplinary way. So tonight I have the pleasure to present one of my personal interest in research concerning the contemporary sacred art. So I will share my screen now. Okay. And first of all, as you see, my theme is about the contemporary sacred art, a transdisciplinary way, a transdisciplinary dialogue. Usually, when one speaks about sacred art refers to a traditional way of defining. But taking into account that the last century was very complicated and very provocative, we try to propose a transdisciplinary way to define sacred art, which is not anymore traditional definitions. So my first slide is about the artistic context of the 20th century. Regarding the field of the artistic creation, the 20th century marked an especially important period in the general context of the history of arts. This is due to the great number of movements and artistic directions that represented a very influential breakup regarding the conceptual horizon of creators of art. This period represents an especially troubled time as far as historical, social, cultural, and artistic events are concerned. Referring to the last aspect, the 20th century is the moment of a permanent attempt to replace, to renew, and even to reinvent the artistic expression of the past. This fact has, as a result, the appearance of a big number of movements, such as Fauvism, Expressionism, Cubism, Abstract, and so on, and many others whose length practically covers the entire temporal space of this century. The 20th century is special by a continuous dispute between modern forms and traditional ones, between conservative and innovative ones. Regarding the plan of establishing a creative direction, the first part of the 20th century is part of a general predilection for the idea of new and novelty regarding the topic of artistic creation. This is the root of a multitude of association of this period with the notion of modernism being understood as that capacity of using innovation by tearing the artistic present apart from the values of the traditional art. Another association of this term is that of the meanings of transgression of traditional artistic values. Thus understanding the defection from established models of bidimensional chromatic, volumetric, or figurative representation of the previous period. Gaining momentum, this change is also envisaged, as we could have been predicted, artistic creation inspired by religion. So we clearly can speak of a dialogue between these two domains of the science concerning the art and religion. But starting with the second half of this century, the progressive model of previous periods started to fade away. This moment would validate a new attitude regarding the traditional values of art, to whom the following decades would pay a special attention regarding artistic creation. This tendency of rediscovery of the artistic spirit of the past, without blaming the one of the present, encapsulated in that notion of postmodernity, plays a terrifically special role regarding the artistic creation of the past few decades. By foreshadowing a step of re-debate of the problems exposed by the modern period, starting especially with the 60s of the past century, postmodernism is defined as an analysis period of specific aspect of modernism. In this respect, postmodern art is characterized by a perpetual transformation of creative forms and expression, fighting for originality and impressing by the multitude of affirmation possibilities in the field of art. Postmodern art thus reveals its interdisciplinarity, its transdisciplinarity and eclectic approach. Contemporary times offer the proof of a multitude of connections established between different fields of present sociocultural life and of arts in particular. Thus, the on the floor of the different artistic appearances, different creation make their presence known, being specific both to modern and to postmodern trends, the diversity of directions and styles being one of the main features of this period. In various situations, the idea of new is reached in contemporary art by a sort of recontextualization of the artistic attempts of the past. Therefore, contemporary art becomes a space of reviving them. The religious context of the 20th century is very complicated. Talking about this topic regarding the time that we refer seems to be a very difficult thing to do, given the multitude of religious directions that exist in the world now. The religious pluralism represents a reality of contemporary times. The coexistence of different forms of religious expression is the proof of a native preoccupation of humankind, irrespective of one's culture, ethnos, or religion that one has in connection to one's spiritual status. In this respect, religion must be understood as a form of reference of human being to the divinity. The theoretical approach of the religious phenomenon reveals itself from the beginning as an especially important and complex act. Based on this assertion, which gravitates around the notion of assembly, we will try to develop our thesis referring to the connections established between art and religion in the last decades of the 20th century. When one speaks about religion, taking into account the envisaged period, the theologians bring forward a series of terms such as relativism, syncretism, religious fundamentalism, secularization, atheism, and many others, which individually provide an image of the level of understanding and religious experience of the society. By becoming aware of the grandeur of this phenomenon, we notice the fact that the envisaged vocabulary varies in its complexity, ranging from the purest expression of perceiving the religious experience with all the understood cult and institutional implications to that some authors call the exit from religion. This phenomenon refers to an accumulation of symptoms, among which the remarkable ones are the replacement of the religious traditional feeling with another one which is different from the religious type, the separation of the church from the state, the loss of religion ability to shape the behavior, the inability of religious institutions to permanently impose their authority regarding dogmata and faith, the individualization of faith, and even the dissolution of the sacred. Moreover, according to Marcel Gauchet, the paradox is created by the coexistence of this phenomenon of the exit from religion with another one of reinventing religion. In this respect, the last decade sociologists underline a process of return to religion. Nowadays, it is discussed even the notion of postmodern religiosity, referring to the idea of a spiritual life detached from the church, deinstitutionalized, and even secular. This notion tends to encapsulate a series of attitudes of rediscovery of the values of the esotericism, mysticism, and Oriental spirituality, of the occultism, irrational, paranormal, and of this type of ideas discovering different forms of alternative spirituality, which approach to Christianism a retrograde vision of life, supporting the need of a synthesis of different religions. Having as a starting point the idea of an interreligious dialogue, this time we are going to extrapolate this idea toward the dialogue that has existed from centuries between the field of religion and art. Since ancient time, religion and art have been two essential sides of the human spirituality, the first of them representing the connection between human beings and divinity, while the other, the possibilities of creative expression as an impulse having divine roots. The art of the 20th century cannot be regarded in a detached manner compared to the art of the previous periods. It represents, at least historically speaking, the consequence or the result of a pursuit of the art of the past, thus reflecting the artistic and aesthetic spirit of the present. In this connection to the field of religion, the art of the 20th century reflects this surge. The diversity of forms and artistic expression offers the proof of their intensity, of the way of understanding and perceiving the religious feeling. Being a century of the pluralism of values, both religious and artistic, we believe it is natural the fact that among all these expressions, one can find both traditional forms of the artistic religious bonds, which is meant through sacred art, and some revolutionary expressions of these connections, permanently searching for the breakup from tradition, innovation and interpretation, and the rediscussion of these aspects at the level of understanding which is due to the discoveries of the 20th century.
Adrian, if you allowed me. Adrian, yes. Put in, go forward with the image, please.
Oh, sorry, it's blocked. Yes, sorry.
Okay.
Yes, sorry. Now I will explain you some definitions of the sacred art, because nowadays we can find a variety of meanings reaching for diverse significance. Its usage in different contexts and referring to different branches of artistic creation shows this diversity of implication. So sacred art can refer in the context of the 20th century both to an art which has a purpose in itself to serve the religious cult, and also an art created by predominantly secular artists who envisage only aesthetic purposes and for whom this notion can have extended meaning or very different from those connected to the topic of religious field. So sacred art, quoting the French writer and theologian Jérôme Cotin, have 5 meanings, 5 definitions. First, the first one is the sacred art is the art of the icons, art of icons. The second, sacred art is art produced by religions. The third, sacred art is sacred art, is the art of the liturgical space, is the art of the church. The fourth, sacred art is the art which possesses a quality of transcendence. And the last one, sacred art is the genuine art. We believe that any of these acceptations previously presented are patterned upon a general formula defining sacred art. In an attempt of synthesizing numerous theories formulated about art and sacrality, we could admit the fact that sacred art has, at least in Christianity, a series of traits that are valid most of the time. Thus, we notice the sacred art is characterized by universality, detaching itself from the shapes of the living world by searching for reality superior to the human existence and being practically the fruit of divine revelation, in full accordance with Titus Burckhart's theories. And also, sacred art is conditioned by a tight conjunction between the artistic or visible forms of the creative process and the spiritual vision that coordinates this process. We will try to resume this pluralism of understanding of contemporary sacred art, choosing to speak forward about a very interesting tendency of contemporary art consisting in its transdisciplinarity. The contemporary art is the witness of various examples of artistic manifestation having a transdisciplinary character, both for Christianism and in general. This fact underlines the one and more secular character of present art compared to the ideal quality of sacred art promoted by other artistic periods. We will not insist on this aspect. We will only try to underline another important element which defines the artistic religious context of the second half of the 20th century regarding the contemporary recurrence of the classic topics or themes of the Christian iconography, such as the Annunciation, and here we can see some artworks of Chrysophily, contemporary representation, such as the Last Supper, and here we can see others representation by Marina Abramovic, Sam Taylor Wood, Michael Kirchner, Bruce LaBruce, and others. The Last Supper, another contemporary representation, some of their very inspired from the Leonardo da Vinci's painting, transposed the Crucifixion also, Chris Burden, Robert Mapplethorpe, Leon Ferrari, and many others. I will not detail them now, being very known in the domain of, in the field of art. But all these transposed in the specific language of contemporary art reflect the new formulas of understanding, of interpretation, of feeling and expressing the religious definition of the sacred art in our days. Irrespective of the approach, topics, artists such as Marina Abramovic, Andres Serrano, Christian Boltanski, Chrysophily, Maurizio Cattelan, Wim Delvoye, Dirmin Hurst, or by Bill Viola, represent just some names of the contemporary personalities whose creation have authentic vibes of the connections between art and religion, at least from the point of view of their critics. So, in conclusion, in a nutshell, without generalizing on the complexity of the entire artistic phenomenon nowadays regarding the connection between sacred art and contemporary art, we write down the following ideas. The contemporary sociocultural artistic context underlines two aspects whose trajectory presently proves to be opposite. In this respect, despite the phenomenon of secularization of the society, which becomes more and more powerful, one can remark a visible attitude of rediscovery of religious issue through artistic creation, and also a reforthcoming of cultural artistic events of the topic of cult spaces. And here we can see the increased number of art exhibitions hosted by sacred spaces, churches, and also those having spiritual topics organized in secular spaces, such as galleries or museums. Beyond the definitions of the sacred art presented therefore before, the understanding of the present state of artistic phenomenon imposes the usage of established models regarding the visual representation of the sacred. Analyzing the ensemble of artistic creation of religious inspiration, a new dilemma becomes more and more obvious regarding the manner of comparing these works from the period to another. Thus, it is more difficult to put together authentic examples of sacred art in a traditional way of interpreting them from the beginning of the Gothic period, for example, and contemporary works which mainly refer to the same topics, such as the discrepancies of thematic and stylistic approaches. The mentioned stylistic evolution is the equivalent of feeling a deep hollowness, spiritually speaking, discussing the sacred character of some images which repeatedly represent kitsch and bad taste. Contemporary art comes with artistic works which continue established values, in many cases emptied of their sacred dimension, and some creations have or not a connection to the respective iconographic tradition which have indisputable religious meanings. From this perspective, the process of or correct discern between these forms of representing the sacred seems to be a very complicated one. The nowadays religious institutions have become more and more permissive based on this phenomenon. But as a solution for all these problems, as I wrote here, I think that transdisciplinary is an important way to analyze and to interpret the artworks in the future, affirming the new foundation for the art. So this is it. Thank you very much.
Thank you too, Adrian Stalerio. Thank you too for your complex and well documented, I should say, and provocative, definitely for some of those who listen, of the panelists, or from the chat, people who watch us in South America or in Europe or in other parts of the world. Definitely you touch a sensible subject, and but a very actual and I should say out of time subject. It's a permanent preoccupation, concern of human being, this sacred dimension of life, of existence, and always, as you know, since the beginning of life, of humanity, of civilization, we know people had this approach, this concern to understand, this temptation of understanding the sense of existence, of life, the biggest question of every human being, and to relate that to a sacral dimension, to which we used to call God in English, and in every language we have this word, and which can get different expression from the low vibration, from the very primitive expression to the highest, to the very metaphysical and philosophical expression, complicated. But anyway, it's definitely clear for everybody that is a permanent concern, a permanent preoccupation, and kind of thought inside of every human being, even for, and I would like to point out this aspect, even for the agnosticists, for the atheists, for those who are refusing from their typology of soul, of the mind, of being, with different levels, as we have to define here. Everybody defined the being, the human being, in a more complex way that the materialism of 20th century offer us, and we are no more believe in that, no more accept that we are bodies, and that's all, with the mind, with the processor there, with the hard disk, and that's all. And we live once. Again, it's something that it's very questionable and very politically exploited concept. We refuse that. A lot of people refuse that, this idea, looking very in the past times and discovering that nobody believes in that. In ancient times, only modernity accept and impose this perspective on reality. But of course, it's an open discussion. We have to stay in this condition of diversity of ideas, of conception, and to accept or to deny this kind of topic, this kind of aspects of reality. And what you share us is, on my opinion, that the interest in arts, in contemporary art at the institutionalized level, the professional level, we are not speaking about the art in a Saturday, I don't know, for somebody who has some passion for art and after work make maybe some art and manage some concepts, some ideas, but we speak about the international circuit of museums and art galleries with the its system of evaluation, which we know has also a political dimension and a financial dimension, very important ones, which all these are interfering, and also philosophy, not only politics, and modern and contemporary are interfering and somehow influencing definitely the minds of the artists and the way they express this interest for the sacred art. And my short question is maybe redundant, but definitely you invite us to think and to believe that sacred art in any kind of form will continue. This is my question.
Yes, yes, of course. Thank you, Christian, for this this question. Sacred art existed and will exist. The one who's changing is the form or the definition or the interpretation. Many years ago, many millennia ago, sacred art was the same with the traditional art. When we think to the tribal art, the art of the tribes of the ancient people, that art was sacred. In our days, when we speak about sacred, we have to take into account that sacred is a notion very complex, which has also philosophic meanings, religious meanings, artistic meanings. So this is why I think here could be a connection, a transdisciplinary connection between all these fields, and to find a more complex and correct definition to the sacred art. And here I have, as I already do it, to quote Jérôme Cotin, who is a French author who already studied about and wrote about this subject, and which I respect very much, and also Mircea Eliade, Rudolf Otto, going forth in the 19th century, in the 20th and 19th century. All the authors who were preoccupied by this subject discovered that the sacred, das ganz andere, it's a very complex notion, which in our days should be interpreted, and it is interpreted by the artist in very, very complex forms. Sacred art, I remember a documentary movie made by BBC, I think, some years ago, and they asked a monk in the Athos month, in the Saint Athos month, if they have sacred art, and the monk answered that they don't have art, they have cult products. Sacred art for the one who believes in God, who believes in divinity, is not only art, is more than that. So this is why in our days, when we speak about sacred art, we have to take into account all these definitions, all these interpretations, all these. For a philosopher, the sacred art could be something. For a religious person, maybe has another signification. So it is a subject we will search or research in the future. And I think, to answer very quickly to your question, I think in the evolution of sacred art. And I think sacred art will continue. We will see. We will be the one who will be the spectators of sacred art, and we'll see evaluate.
Thank you, Christian. If he allowed me, I'm tempted to ask Sasha a point of view if he has any interest in the topic of Adrian. Would you like us, Sasha, to express your position?
I'm sure there's also many other people, maybe also people from YouTube, who have questions. So I wouldn't want to, take too much time. But since you just raised since you just brought me to talk just now, one thing which I would find really fascinating, but I guess it would take a lot of time for Adrien to go into that, but the relations, both the parallels and the tensions maybe between maybe animistic forms or animistic movements in sacred art, theistic movements, some different directions, from different parts of the world. That would be so fascinating to hear about, I'm sure.
Yes, thank you, Sasha. Thank you. So it's not a question, it's a
it's a point of view anyway, and
yes.
it's more extended. Yeah, but of course, Adrian touched some very well-known directions and names of the contemporary and ideas and principles of his topic. But of course, are many other attitudes regarding and including the concept of sacred of today, sacred in general, and sacred art also expressions. I should tell to Marco Tullio and to Giulietta that I don't have access to the chat of only of panelists. So until we'll have Amalia, we cannot receive answers, questions from the people who watch us, and I don't know what to do now. So for that, I'm inviting you to, if somebody else from panelists has a comment or a question around the topic of Adrian Stolerio regarding his topic of sacred art, contemporary sacred art. If not, I think we already he present very well, on my opinion, very well documented with the sources from the field of contemporary art, and also with the ideas extracted from the academical territories of analysis of different type of art, including the formulas of sacred art of today. So we will meet again this night with this concept of sacred art and art in relation with philosophy and with nature also. So this kind of sacrality, as Sasha evoked, not only in relation with the entity, with the hypostasis supreme from another level, from a transcendental level, but from our level, I should say, to be precise, in the logic of transdisciplinarity, because happens that we refer many times in our level of reality, and we apply a logic of transdisciplinarity, but we stay quite in our world. So in this case, I should express myself and my concern that transdisciplinary, one of the fundamentals of this methodology of researching the reality with big R, is this central idea of multiple levels of reality, not only one level. And the reason for thinking on this way is the quantum physics from the beginning of the 20th century, who demonstrate the existence of another level of reality, the quantum level, with different laws. And right after this moment, the physicists proclaim, if exists another one, that should be exists the possibility of many others. So the whole history is re-evaluated, and the mythology and all the traditions, ancient traditions, metaphysical and religious and so on, are all re-evaluated. And again, this is one principle: multiple levels of reality, and the dialogue, the condition of dialogue, and the hidden third of the element who give us the possibility of a different logic than the dual logic of modernity, true or false, yes or no, but the hidden third, which passes through these different levels of reality and make relations between them, and which, as you know, definitely an element A and an element B are different, but there is the hidden third, an element C, which is different than A and B, but is equal to A and is equal to B, which is a paradox. But this is, again, one of the fundamental of transdisciplinary logic and the methodology of searching and knowing reality. So if you allowed me, I invite you to stay on this very large logic of possibilities, and not only here on Earth, where we know all we live in the age of post-truth, where finding the truth officially is quite complicated, and politics has more than ever and a very important role on defining the values systems and the way of thinking, and it's very complicated then to know what is good and what is bad, what is false and what is true, and why to stay only here, to think only here, to act only here, and to evaluate our possibilities only on this movie, and not to go outside in base of the information what we can find through the large, enormous quantity of literature, of information, what we can access in the age of new Renaissance we live, digital age. If somebody else from panelists, because I don't know, there is a Liana question I start to receive from people from outside, not from panelists. From my agnostic and post-structuralist perspective, art can't be tied to an original meaning. To me, God is impossible to define or to represent. Can we say instead that art is sacred in intentionality? And she's completing, my question is then, if the intention is to create a sacred emotion, even kitsch can be sacred? She's asking the second question. Let's start with the first. Can we say instead that art is sacred in intentionality? I think
yeah, of course. Of course. Every artwork starts in our mind and in our soul. And if our intention is religious intention, of course, even kitsch could be, as a result, a sacred art product. But don't forget that divinity should be perfection, or is perfection. So kitsch is not perfection. So in an ideal way to interpret these things, I would say that kitsch should not be interpreted as sacred art. Sacred art should be the perfection, the absolute perfection of the art. But when we think and when we see in our churches, in our religious connections, that people believe and pray even in the front of a picture, which is not sacred art, which is not an icon, which is not religious painting, we can answer very clearly that even that art could be sacred in intentionality, and instead kitsch could be sacred for that person. But when it depends how we interpreted things, these things, it depends. Many people don't consider that sacred art could be a kitsch. Many people, but when it comes of feelings, we can say yes. It doesn't matter the way the divinity is represented, if it is a religious way of thinking, of feeling, of expressing. Here, the answer is very, very difficult to. It's very difficult to give an answer. I spoke sometimes with an artist, and I had the same subject, and he answered me that when a people comes in front of sacred images, that man doesn't know how it was the artist, but it knows and it sees the artwork. The only one which counts is the artwork. So we have to pay very attention to the way of representing divinity. It's not so simple. It's not so. Here are very, very different. We know that in Byzantine iconography there are some rules which should be respected, and these rules could be encountered in many other religious cultures. Not even in not only in Christianism. In every culture, there are rules. And what is sacred for the Egyptians may not be sacred for the Christians. What is sacred for the Christians may not be sacred for the Buddhists. So it is a very difficult answer.
Adrian, okay, it's a long topic. It's a long topic here, and we don't want to. Yes, long and complicated. Of course, you evoke the technical aspects of what we call art in a traditional perspective, but of course, there is technique and meaning of doing well in any kind of contemporary art, even as relational art or very recent form of art, which not imply paintings with its technology or sculpture or something like that, or even installation, no more, maybe without objects, or maybe only ideas, as happens in contemporary art, to have only the concept and nothing else material. But of course, we need techniques, we need purity, we need density, and to call it art and to exhibit it in the best places, in the institutional, again, spaces dedicated to art, and to show it to many people and to have good feedback. But open discussion, and maybe we will continue somehow through the questions and through the contacts we let us for the other people. So thank you very much, Adrian. Thank you very much. And then now we'll come to again to our time, to a very modern and contemporary topic, to design. I mean, of course, design was created, invented the beginning of time of humanity, again, as a sacred art too, when we create the first tools, definitely when we create the concept of will, and when we invent the first chemistry control process, I mean the fire, how to make and use fire, then we start also designing. And for that we invite, and I would like to thanks also her. We invite Alexandra Ghiok, which is designer, professional product designer, but also teacher. She was born in 1988. It is written there. I did not have to say that, but it is written here. Is a Romanian product designer and teaching assistant in product design at her alma mater, George Enescu National University of Arts from Iași, Romania. After gaining a BA, MA, and PhD in product design and various national and international awards, Alexandra founded B-Sector or Bisector, along with the visual artist and professor PhD Radu Carnariu, which we'll meet later. Alexandra's both practical and theoretical researches focuses on emerging technologies, critical design, and art, and its constantly questioning role in the context of the material culture, role of design, definitely, striving to create national awareness. She is also a member of the Romanian Visual Artists Union and collaborates with the Romanian Design Council, Community Foundation Iași, of several NGO, Design the Big Design, as a founding member, Install Art or Meru, association, by organizing events, workshops, conferences, seminars, and national competitions, or publishing theoretical studies. Alexandra Ghiok currently lives and works in Iași, Romania, and holds workshops and lectures at various universities from Europe. Alexandra, welcome.
Hello to everybody, and thank you so much for this invitation. I'm truly honored to be here tonight along you. I will start my presentation right now. My presentation is regarding design, as Christian stated. And it's about design between the culture of need and the need of culture. Mostly, it's about how design, by its transdisciplinary nature, transformed itself over the past decades. But before we start, it's really important to understand from an international point the definition of design, because we have enormous variety of subdomains. And this is a simple print screen from Wikipedia with what is design. So you can see from communication design, visual design, interaction design, interface design, game design, web design, lighting design, to sound design, electronic design, landscape design, urban design, software design, service design. So we have from visual arts to electronics, from traditional design to engineering. Nowadays, everything is design. Even in the classification of the occupational stand code from Romania, we have quite a variety. This is the text in the image in the right, but only some have academic courses. So we question ourselves every day and ask ourselves, is design a form of art or is it science? How many subdisciplines are there in design? Or is the nature of design so transdisciplinary that anyone can practice design? This confusion is understandable because design is also, in English, is also a verb which describes an action and also a noun, the design. This is not only a field of activity, but also a study discipline. This ambiguity is generated by the controversial moment when design started, both as a conscious activity and as a field of study. This is why I proposed, starting from the Industrial Revolution, two periods in design. One, pre-design or non-intentional intuitive design, and intentional design after the Industrial Revolution. But I think the most important movement of all started with Bauhaus. Bauhaus school was really, really important, a school of art starting from the 1990s, and had the main purpose to unify all disciplines of art in one single piece of art called Gesamtkunstwerk, or the total work of art. Later on, Bauhaus school was followed by, in Ulm in the 53 in the West Germany, by Hochschule für Gestaltung in Ulm, sharing the same transdisciplinary vision. Ulm proposed a fusion between science and art, creating an educational structures that aimed at identifying solutions in the design process. These defining aspects based Bauhaus principles that later on, and experiments such as user experience, neuromarketing, or interaction design based their principles on these two schools. But as time goes on, good design and modernism were based on principles like form follows function, or less is more, or the 10 principles of good design by Dieter Rams. But these principles shifted, and the main concern was not about the connections and the society, but to understand and reshape how we see the civilizations. And design has undergone a number of crucial changes. Design shifted to a new type of functionality, a cultural one, a new domestic landscape, and this happened in the 60s. The 60s, with the postmodernism, we had anti-design, we had Superstudio, Archigram, Archizoom, Alchemia, Memphis, and later in Germany, Kunstflug, followed by Dutch movement Droch, and later critical design. And these movements shifted the way we see design today. It abandoned the idealistic claims that design is universal, and the myth that the designer is an exclusive trendsetter or a master of all aesthetics or technological innovations. And as Koskinen stated, in Design Through Practice, from objects that set out to please everyone, it shifted to objects that pick their own consumers, from languages of reason to languages of emotions. Therefore, accept products that are intended to efficiently fulfill the purpose of which they were created, such as a nail, for example, and implicitly serialization, we can observe a diverse range of products that surprise through conceptual freedom, or in other words, through culture. So we have this general dilemma in the field of design. Is it design art or an integral part of the art world, or is it a scientific domain? On one hand, we can talk about design as a scientific domain because it has a clear purpose, it has an obvious utility, it is collective, it is conscious, it is objective, it lacks intentionality, and its main stake is not an aesthetic component in the art world, as Adrian Forthy stated. On the other hand, we can talk about art because it has as an unique author. It encourages the freedom of speech. It generates usually a unique object. Design is collaborative and has constraints, limitations, and generates usually mass-produced goods. But on the other hand, design can be seen as a part of the art world. We can talk about design as a part of an integrated part of the art world, especially with the radical changes produced by the Dada movement, meaning Duchamp, of course, because the status of the serial object and its aesthetics shifted. The intentional translation of an object from a context to another has altered the main meaning of objects, which still generates a reconsideration of art or design and proposes a new functionality, a new efficiency, a cultural one, where the utility of an object is transformed. So if Danto, Goodman, or Genet were confronted with a mutation from what is art to is art, it is only natural to ask ourselves in the opposite direction, maybe not what is design, but especially when is design. In this illustration in front of you, I have inserted 3 examples. First is Duchamp's urinal that, through recontextualization, is converted into an art object by placing it into an art gallery, of course. Extending this way of thinking, we can think about an interior designer who, for example, takes a bench created by a sculptor, translates it into an interior design, and generates a design object. But this mentality arises a question, meaning the third example. So if we could remove Duchamp's urinal from the art gallery, would it be an art object? Or would it be a simple mass-produced urinal? But in time, the role of design extended beyond the idealist paradigm of Bauhaus and Ulm legacy into a vector of social and cultural mentality that is able to reshape, adapt, and enhance the contextual complexity of nowadays material culture. More than ever, contemporary design studies deepen its own social capabilities to alter or improve ideologies and behavior and investigate the identity changes experienced by individuals in contemporary society, establishing by his means a response and aware of thinking or acting. Or, as Jan Woodward states, the object becomes a facilitator of interaction between users and multiple meanings of products. To better understand this concept, let's think about a chair, a very, very common object. But when we think about a chair, we think about the symbol. We think about the cultural and political emblem. A chair can be an extension of a human body. A chair can be an expression of an individual taste. A chair can be a reflection of an user. If you think in the art world, when you think about Francisco Goya's aquatint, Ya tienen asiento, a chair was a symbol of normality. Or if you think about the setup from Kossuth, from 1 and 3 chairs, the chair can be a linguistic expression. A chair can be a symbol of power. If you think about the installation created by artist Kessler, where the throne was created by weapons. Or from Johnny Swing $50 chair, a chair created only from coins, $500,000 chair. Or if you think about Stiletto's studio consumer's rest chair, where he converted a shopping cart into a chair. Actually, I think we can create some similarities between a throne and an office chair, because it is a symbol of power. Or if we think about a chair as an office chair as an indicator of status, we have an office chair from a CEO and the office chair that is used nowadays in Romania to work 8 hours a day. So it could be said that when we think about a chair, we make a society or a city in miniature. And in fact, it's really important to understand that in this process, unfortunately, designers have failed. They failed to create a self-sufficient perfect object because it doesn't need more improvements or innovation. If we think about Adrian Forty's theory of the evolution of new needs, as you see in the illustrations, generates new consumer goods. But in order to create these new consumer goods, we need new machinery. So Henry Petrovsky created a new expression instead of form follows function, to form follows failure. And Henry Petrovsky quoted Donald Norman in his book, The Design of Everyday Things, and he counted the number of objects that we have on our desk right now. It is 100 of writing instruments, fixing elements, accessories, mouse pads, and so on. Later on, a psychologist, Erwin Biedermeier, estimates that an adult interacts with around 30,000 objects daily. This number is obtained by counting the number of nouns in the dictionary. Another study shows that, made by George Basala, showed that in the last 2 centuries, 5 million goods were patented. So we have to ask ourselves, is design only a tool in increasing the turnover of a company, or is it more? Because overproduction has inevitably triggered an unprecedented critical trends in design. And this is why another movement really important in design is born. It is called critical design, and it is founded by Professor Anthony Dune and Fiona Raby. And it uses design not only for increasing the turnover of a company, but to create an intellectual stance, to create the importance of design, and to focusing on questioning, analyzing, criticizing, or prospective design in various scenarios related to contemporary social and technological context. In fact, if you think about contemporary design, and mostly in design thinking, we can say it's a shift between material and immaterial, from mass production to designing without an action object. It's more about the process as a cognitive one. It's more about the result and more about design without an object. From form follows function, now it's form follows experience. Or as Philip Stark stated, it's more about intelligence and less about materials. This is why Marty Guixe stated he coined himself as an ex-designer, because he thought that designers should disseminate new strategies and solve various problems in context of emerging global problems. To end my presentation, I have inserted 3 examples. The first one is created by Anthony Dune and Fiona Raby. It is called Faraday Chair, created in 1995 in Victoria and Albert Museum. It's a transdisciplinary project consisting in an orange transparent box, which is suspended on a metal frame that provides shelter and protects the today's technoman from electromagnetic fields, equally representing a prison that blocks its consumer. The second one, it's called Favela Chair, created by Umberto and Fernando Campagna in 2003. And it's created with the same principles that one creates favela. The architectural principle is the same. The chair is created from scrapes. And it's interesting because it's both a unique artifact and a serious product, and highlights the connection between design and the economic context, being at the same time loaded with political and social messages. The third one is created by Italian designer Gaetano Pesce. It's a chair created from foam. It's called shadow armchair because it's a serial object, but when the user stands on the chair, it takes the shape of the user. So it's like a 3-dimensional replica of Yves Klein, if you like an anthropomorphism. It takes the shape or the contour of the user. And it's also a serial object and also a unique artifact, showing how design translates all boundaries. So thank you so much for your attention. This is the presentation that I have prepared.
Thank you, Alexandra. Thank you very much. Concentrated and actual and vivid as the others speakers before you. And we were glad to hear and watch your ideas and the concepts you offer us. And I don't want to start now with the question, to do not abuse with the fact that I'm the moderator. So if somebody from panelists want to express a questions or a comment to Alexandra's presentation, please. Okay, then I'll make mine. Can you express in a sentence? Maybe I'll make a very difficult question now. How will be the future of design in the next, let's say, 10, 15 years or 20 years, looking at what happens in the last 20 or 30 years since the beginning of internet, because it was a big challenge and big, okay. Please.
It's not my point of view, but I will quote Naoto Fukasawa. It's a well-known designer from Japan, and he has this theory regarding Internet of Things that design will evolve in two manners. So objects will evolve in two manners. Namely, it will create objects that are for the user to be worn on the body, and other integrated into architecture. Let me explain. In the past, when we talk about, for example, a phone was a big box, a collective object, not a personal one. As technology evolved and everything was more, the components were slimmed down and internet evolved, also the technology, a telephone transformed itself from a big box to a tiny little objects that can be like a Bluetooth headphone or a small smartphone that you wear on your body. On the other hand, if you think about a TV will also was a big box, but now we see that it's slimmer and slimmer and will soon, I think, be replaced by a hologram. So it will be integrated in the architecture. So I think this is the way that design will shift into different areas on the body and on the architecture. I think Naoto Fukasawa has an excellent point of view. Of course, design is more powerful, as I wanted to share that with you. It's more than creating objects that will help the turnover of a company. It has a huge influence on users, on behavior, on patterns, on society, and its role it's increasing daily.
Another short question, please allow me. Extension in the transdisciplinary again perspective. Do you think there is inside of a process of making an object in design, there is some animism? I think it is in English, this word, process. I mean, the relation, psychological relation we have with the objects we buy or we create, as you did as a designer. And in this way, we can talk about a spiritual dimension of design?
Yes. Yes, I think we can, because users create connections with objects. You cannot fall in love with your fridge due to its functionality, but you can embrace the values of a brand, for example. And if the philosophy of the brand is similar with the principles that you have, then you create a connection, because usually the main functionality of the object is the same. You can sit on a chair, the functionality is the same, but the connection that you create with this object is the one that sets a big question of objects of desire. This is the...
Thank you.
Okay, Professor Ngorano, I have a little question for our colleague. I want to say that it was an amazing presentation with arts, with engineering, with techniques, with architecture. I saw a famous mechanical engineering handbook we use it. Yes, my question is, my little question is about computer-aided design. Could be computer-aided design used in arts?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Actually, I think I was kind of prepared to have this question, and it's really interesting because I follow a Dutch designer called Martin Bas, and on his left web page, he has frequently asked questions, and the first question was, "Are you a designer or an artist?" And his answer is yes. It's not yes or no, it's are you a designer or an artist? He answered yes, because of course through computers we can create anything. It's more a question of intentionality. What do we want to connect? It's to create. We can create using computers, 3D printed objects. We can create, so this is a more democratic way of looking at on design. We can create art. The question of creating art as a unique object, as I presented, it's no longer an issue today. So yes, my question is yes. Of course, the answer would be more complicated than that, but to keep it short, I think yes. And thank you so much for your feedback.
Yes, okay. But unfortunately, computer-aided design is used in techniques, in engineering, but for sure that it could be used and is used in arts. Yes. Okay.
Think about artists like Damien Hirst, for example, or Jeff Koons, who create. They are not solo artists. They use a huge team of manufacturers, of technicians, of other artists to create a single unique work of art. So it's not a matter of a unique author, but mostly a teamwork. And as long as technology helps the vision to realize the vision of the artist, then I don't think it's a problem. It's a question of intentionality. If you want to create art with it, if you want to create design, if you want to create, I don't know, any type of object, you can do it. So technology is just a meaning to follow your intention.
Some other questions from panelists, please. Amalia, if you're here.
So if there's any other question from inside here from Zoom, let's take some from the YouTube platform. There's many comments about your how exciting and how good your presentation was, Alexandra. Sorry for that. What would be the scopes of design in the digital world, and what would be the main changes according to your perspective?
The main change, I think it's created by the evolution of technology and the Internet of Things regarding the digitalization. Because on one hand, various objects will unify in only one. If we think, and some objects will disappear. Think about your alarm clock. As I raised, I had an alarm clock that was a physical object. Nowadays, an alarm clock is a function in your mobile. Of course, some objects will disappear and other will be created. Not all the objects that we create are actual needs. If we think about a fitness band, for example, how many people lived without a fitness band in the world? Nowadays, of course, we all need a fitness band because this is a new marketing need. It's not a real need, but we all want it. It's an object of desire. So to answer the question, I think Internet of Things was the main point and the most important shifting point in the design evolution. because some objects will disappear and some will evolve, some will be created despite the fact that they are not needed. So the digitalization will, from one hand, be a useful thing because it will help us manage our time better. It will help us manage our lives. If you think about the fact that all the objects will be connected in cloud and will be synchronized. On the other hand, of course, it's a more sensible problem if you think about that, the fact that all objects follow you and will know your behavior and your where you are all the time and what are you doing. Of course, this is another topic, but from this point of view, it can be a little bit controversial, but Internet of Things clearly is the shifting point in design.
I continue the question a little bit. Will design have always to do with art? On your opinion, the beauty as we define since forever will continue to be a part of designing?
I think so, because we are human beings and we love objects, especially through their aesthetic components. And when I say aesthetic, I don't mean only visual, I mean tactile, through smell, through all the senses that involve interacting with objects. And design, as I presented, was never another part of history. It was an integrated part of an artwork. Of course, through its transdisciplinary nature, it's controversial. And this is why I presented these subdomains that construct design nowadays. But yes, I think it will always be a part also from art, also from science, also from its transdisciplinary nature, what makes it so interesting and special.
Sandra, Amalia, we have some other questions, please.
More than a question, it's a comment that wants to broaden this idea, and it's the relationship between art and design depends on the design's typology, which Alexandra presented. And besides the aesthetics, it not only has to be with the intention. What would you have to say about the intentionality?
I think intentionality is really important, because if you intend to create an object that is intended for mass production, it's from the very beginning you design an object from a point of view. If you think about small series or artifact, then you design it differently. So intention is really important. If you think about designing in the term of projecting something, like a decorative object that you only look at and interact from an emotional point of view, but not from a functional point of view, then it's another problem. It's really a question of what is the intention of the designer or the creator when he or she designs the object. Of course, sometimes users find maybe second functionalities or find different meanings in your object, maybe. But intentionality is really crucial, because you discover or you create something taking into account several points when you start creating something.
Thank you. Again, I wish to continue the question you had. Do you think design of the immediate future will continue to look in the nature to find inspiration and, as Margarita said at the beginning, ergonomic principles and functional and also beauty?
Yes, it's really a trend in design, so, or maybe not a trend, but a really important part called biomimesis, or the study of nature and how we can learn from the nature and translate principles into design. One really good example is Luigi Colani, Italian designer, German and Italian designer Luigi Colani actually got inspired by nature. For example, he created a camera from Canon when he got inspired by a bird, or he created cars for BMW or so on, also inspired by various animals. So yes, design will always be in touch with nature. Also because nature teaches us a lot of things, but also because we as human beings are an integrated part of nature. We are in the same ecosystem. So of course we are one with nature, and nature teaches us everything.
Thank you, Alexandra. I think we have a general theme of today, which goes through the presentation of all we had already. And of course, I see some relation with the Sasha presentation from 20 of January, from our first meetings. And I have the sensation that design is a growing arts, science, definitely theology. Maybe some designer can develop some metaphysical type of thinking in his mind and project it into the design objects.
Excuse me, you asked me, and now I thought about a better example. Romanian designer and CEO Marius Ursaki created something called Eternini, which is a platform exactly for this, to create a persona after a user is deceased. So to later conserve your memories and to create this persona that can that the family can interact with the deceased user, and it collects all the memories, all the activities, all the preferences.
Some scenario.
Example for spirituality and design, for example.
Thank you very much. It reminds me of the movie with Johnny Depp, where the character put his consciousness inside of internet and continue to live in this way. And look, as I said, design seems to be the multi-art science and so on, catch all functions of human activities. And this is really very interesting. Amalia, do we have something different and interesting, please?
See, well, actually, we have also other questions to other panelists that we may want to go back because they are linked, no? If there's any, if there's any other for Alexandra, I would like to recover some questions for Margarita because they are really interesting and they might be also connecting. So if you don't mind, I can read them. And well, they're in Spanish, so let me connect myself. How does this methodology could have applications on the prevention and health contexts like the ones that we have right now? And where, and how do we require, or if we require to implement some help in for health in all the levels? There was a question that we found here in the YouTube platform. Also, we have another one that it's, would perception, cognition, dialogue be equivalent to transit through levels of reality? And there's a third one, but if you wish to say this one first,
okay,
then ask you.
Thank you, Amalia.
Go ahead.
Maybe I'll take the first one, if you want. Yes. So, well, in fact, I'm working with a physician, doctor in Mexico, and we are because my work, our approach have, of course, a health aspect, and it covers not only health, because it's a transdisciplinary area, so everything is connected. It's very important nowadays, and especially right now, to be aware of our absence of knowledge of our own body. It's incredible. We don't even know what is it. So luckily, this situation brings us back to our own nature. So there is a kind of, not like a real necessity to educate, to be educated, to know better what is our own nature. So we are developing a research and to work also with, I'm working also with a psychologist. And our approach is not taking only one dimension, the physical dimension of the human being, but including not only psychological, also, of course, affective, and the spiritual part of the person. And it is possible. There are other approaches that make it possible to articulate my work with psychologists and medicine. That's what that's my research now.
Margarita, and the second question.
And the second question is so it's like a kind of transdisciplinary, the fact of being able to articulate the cognition, perception, and I would say all the, yes, of course. For me, that's the point of in the transdisciplinarity. The thing is how to educate innovative projects in educations or approaches that take into account all the dimensions of the human being, as I tried to show it in one of the slides, no? But it's the main point for Nicolescu. It's this transdimensionality of the subject.
Thank you, Margarita. Thank you, Margarita. I think we will follow now our program, because we already extend a little bit, and we don't want to extend too much to tell to give also to the other two transdisciplinary researchers and artists, because we have more two artists to speak for us tonight. And before introducing and coming back somehow to the territory of spirituality and of multi-level, because we come back to this definition of transdisciplinarity, which Alexandra offered us, of design as a multidimensional preoccupation of contemporary humanity, of modern and contemporary humanity, which include a lot of valences. But now we will go again to different levels, to transcendental one, which we put into discussion if exist or not exist. And some of us, we believe from our, some of us from our beings, some of us just invest in that on a psychological level, in Blaise Pascal logic. So it's like, it's good to believe because it's nothing to lose. And some are not taking into consideration from a moral or different kind of logic. But it's good to have diversity, definitely. Before presenting the next one in the same topic, in the same spirit, I have to say that Ciret is organizing on the same subject matter of Adrian and of the others too. Subject of spirituality and arts, organize a conference on 26th, and I will put on my Facebook group, and our friends who are in contact with me, as you, Margarita, and Sasha has also my address, and I will send to Mr. Robert Four and to the others the poster and the statement of this event, dialogic meetings. I will say it in English. Do not confuse the YouTube robot. but it will be in French. In fact, it will happen in French with French personalities from art and philosophy and art critics and so on, and under this title, Dialogic Meetings, Arts and Spirituality, on 26 at 18 o'clock in Paris. And now, I have the pleasure to introduce a very particular personality, very powerful artist, on my opinion. I'm a painter too. He's a painter. His name is Robert Faure. He's a French. And Robert Faure learned Zen painting and techniques and philosophical approaches alongside a renewed...
Yes, hello, Christian.
Yes, Robert, s'il vous plaît, if you have to wait to present you first, and after that, okay, please, you can close if you want the microphone for a little bit, for 2 minutes. So he learned Zen painting and techniques and philosophical approaches alongside a renewed Chinese painter, traversing the paths of the Chinese mountains day and night by painting on site, on plein air. He was the first Frenchman to be allowed to exhibit. Robert Faure was the first Frenchman to be allowed to exhibit in 2013 at the oldest government gallery in Beijing, Hongbao Zai. He has exhibited his work in 29 exhibitions in France, Italy, China, Singapore, and California. At the age of 80s, he still teaches thought through France and Europe, different countries in Europe, forming disciples and future professors of this kind of painting in his International Academy of Ink Painting. These paintings, full of life, express this art of the simple, which is more attached to the suggestion of beauty than to appearance of things. Mr. Robert Faure, you have the microphone, please.
Okay, thank you, Christian, for your translate. I am very glad to be with you, but my English is very bad. It's a disaster. It's difficult to be more bad in English. I present 5 gates to enter in the art of simple. I discovered the simplest painting in the world, and perhaps the most difficult one, in 1985, together with a young painter from China, Mr. Tang. Passing through France, he did a demonstration for his students. I watched the ease with which he was moving his brush across in a white piece of paper, occasionally picking up dark ink and some water, and landscape took way before me eyes. A mountain landscape, trees, and a water full in a garment of mist. It was both too good, too simple, too good and too simple for me. But when I wanted to do the same thing again, it was a disaster. Since that day on, I wanted to learn this art of simple, but Master Tang had left. I remembered his few tips by looking for Chinese or Japanese painting books, and every morning I tried to tame my brush like you tame wild animals, with patience, energy, and gentleness. My
Mr.
wife,
Mr. Robert, excuse me for interrupting you. Do you have a PowerPoint to share with us?
PowerPoint, yes, okay.
Please.
All right.
You have to open the PowerPoint before sharing, okay? To have it open, the PowerPoint, and then press share screen button. Perfect. And now full screen. Good.
It's okay?
Yes. Thank you. Continue, please.
My wife helped me and encouraged me. 3 years later, my friends became my first students. In 2024, I had the opportunity to join a group of Swiss painters to go to China for the first time to meet another master of ink painting, Professor Li Xianhong. This was the second spark. Back in France, I wrote the book, L'Esprit du Geste, yes, the name of my book, and I asked Professor Li to deepen my learning. Sorry. After reflection, he agreed to teach me in his studio in China, and then every year travel through the landscapes and mountains of China. In 2010, I continued to learn sumi-e in Japan and took my students with me every 2 years. I have exhibited in China, Singapore, California, Italy, and about 30 times in France. Today, I continue teaching all those who are under the spell of this simple art within the foundation of my ink painting academy, where I am also training future teachers. What is the art of simples, or simple? To dare to speak of the simple means to run a risk nowadays, because everything seems more and more complex as is of necessity. Everything seems complicated since we were born. A human being is complicated. A woman and man, therefore love, freedom is complicated. Sometimes survival in this difficult time. Art also runs the risk of becoming complex. There are too many representations devoid of meaning, of symbols, of rhythm, of an invitation to poetry. We need a real source of creation that speaks of beauty, of the balanced laws of nature, and helps man to recognize himself as precious, strong, and humble. In brief, here is a first key valid for the man nowadays and for the art of the future. The key is complexity weakens us. What can art bring to this great journey of human evolution? I offer you some benchmarks by going through 5 gates with me. First gate, enter in nature, approach it, nature. Nature makes us enter into a process of knowledge. It has its primitive laws, some of which are known, and many others are to be discovered. Whether we are referring to the infinitely small or to the vast scale of cosmos. But all this immensity of food for soul, immensity inspires us in all its forms, rhythms, and colors, its metamorphoses, its contrasts, and its paradoxes. The great advantage of the Zen painting, since the beginning of the 12th century, is to base it on fundamental rules which concern as much techniques, aesthetic, and philosophical wisdom and a discrete spirituality. There are what we call the fundamentals, which allow one to observe nature, to understand it, and to express it. Entering nature means taking the necessary time to perceive it, to touch it, and to hear its hidden life, sometimes fragile and tender, sometimes fierce and sometimes wild. Nature allows us to get to know us better. It opens like a book and offers us a presence and a richness, an immense reserve of dreams. Second gate, entering nature is entering our humanity. Gate of the simple are learning to see and admire. In Western culture, becomes synonymous with obviousness. What is seen is necessarily true. In other words, there is nothing more than what I see. In addition, we believe that watching is easy. It's not true. The world is nourished by a culture that is not limited to what is seen. Eastern through invites any research and therefore any artist to see things as they are before trying to transform them. My teacher and friend from China taught me to watch again, which means taking the necessary time to admire for a long time that an artist breaks a subject into him and one day manages to express it, and in his personal art. It's through your eyes that we speak to nature and to the world. Three gates, sighing and admiring, is accepting the real as it is. Enter the feeling. In Asian culture, one perceives the universe with one earth through earth, mental, and earth. It's the same word in Chinese, shen, mental and earth. In Japan world, the word amato. This means that these two concepts are strongly connected. Here and here. When I think my heart is there, this is there. When I love or I dislike, my truths are with me. In this art of simple, it's important to approach things and people with a benevolent approach, including what seems strange to us or different form of culture, of even incomprehensible at the time. An artist must have the courage to go into the contradiction of this world and including those of this soul. For a future artist, nothing is trivial. For him, the simple, the detail is not trivial or worldness. Fourth principle. The little things in life can hide greatness. In any project or in any artistic decision, a Zen painter will fall in love and feel the hidden beauty of things. He will learn towards seemingly unimportant aspects of life. Desert, light, a lonely tree, clouds, the sound of the water. Everything is important. He will be less driven by a concern for performance, for immediate results, for success at all costs, but by attention to essential things often close to him. The four gates, important gates, resolve paradoxes. I belatedly realized the place of paradoxes in the approach of all art. It's about bringing together two seemingly contradictory elements. It's the same in the scientific process, seems to me. It suffices to remember the paradox in the phenomenon of light, both wave and particle. In art, too, we learn to bring together two apparently different aspects, such as dark and pale, strange and gentleness, the power of life and its delicacy. This is the third term that must be used to discover. There is the richness and the astonishment of a further way. The artist will be at the forefront to learn to resolve the apparent contradictions in the universe of art of life, where others forcefully stand on one of aspects of the real while opposing the other. I discovered with joy these Chinese painters since past centuries called eccentric, who are as often the precursor of the future, the eccentric. They did not stop at the appearance of forms and things. They sought to paint the soul of things rather than their exact shapes. They moved towards the essential without submitting to customary convention. And to make master walls, they meditated before painting. 5 paradox, 5 principes, 5K. The paradox is a passage place. Make sure you don't miss out beauty. Beauty is never monotonous. It's a pedagogy of wonder. But what does beauty or a feeling of harmony means? Because nowadays beauty makes reference to social beauty, vulgar beauty, discreet beauty, sacred beauty. The discreet beauty will undoubtedly have more charm and seduction that a loaded watch with is loudly displayed. And then painter deviates from 2 extremes: the precision of form and their total abstraction. Some between two types of seduction. And then painter deviates from 2 extremes. He will prefer the suggestion of a mountain landscape in a light misty weather, of the vibrant blur of a bamboo forest. Today, I believe that a need for inner breathing brings us into an epiduct, that of the existence of something beyond the appearance. Let's make sure we don't miss it. I believe that the painter of the future is the one who will try to erase himself, to relearn the grace, the suggestion and the sign of harmonies that nature offers to him. I believe that simplicity is a language of truth and of hurt. Let's make sure we don't miss. Thank you for your attention.
We thank you very much, Mr. Robert, for
it's possible, if you have some question, it's possible to help me, please, by Sacha or Christian. You're speaking very well French.
Sasha is speaking very well. I'm not speaking very well, but I will answer you. It is not possible because we will confuse the translation robot of YouTube. So we have to speak only in English. So we will formulate some questions in a clear manner, in the way that you will understand, and you will answer in a Zen manner. Very shortly and condensed. Definitely you will do it like this, because you will not need many words to express an idea. And please allow me, also the panelists, if you allowed me to abuse again of my condition of moderator, to express myself first, my admiration for the presentation, the story, the story full of philosophy and history of painting of many hundreds of years and millennia, maybe traditional Eastern part of the planet. I mean, Asia, China, and Japan, and this part of the world who has this very deep and fascinating philosophy of and practice of art in front of nature. And in this way, we are related again with the beginning of this meeting tonight with Margarita, who evoke also the nature, the function of the human cells and human organism and muscles and so on, an invitation to observe and to contemplate the beauty and the complexity, but in a positive way, which you evoke, not the complexity of modernity and postmodernity, which put us in the danger of becoming so complex that we'll not no more understand how to live and how to enjoy our existence, and how to understand, first of all, the meaning and the purpose of our lives. And the lesson you offer us today is full of grace and density of thoughts, and also beauty of artistic expression, and not only traditional but also absolutely contemporary, because there are a lot of artists which are still believing in our skills, native skills, and the possibility of meditating in front of nature, in front of an image offered by nature. But not only, because I saw a Sydney landscape painted by you in the same manner of contemplating, deeply contemplating and identifying your consciousness and being with the image you contemplate, and then transposing into a ritualistic proceeding. It is not a modern painting, is not an aggressive way of painting, but it's a sort of dancing with the brush and with the painting and with the water and ink, which is it's a pure philosophy of artistic gesture. And this is really complex and fascinating, and the lesson you offer us, if you want to accept it, of those of going back to our roots, our inner roots, but also of the nature roots, to observe the beauty, the rhythm, the music, the natural complexity and purity, makes me also think of Dostoevsky famous affirmation, the beauty will save the world. I think you stay in the same spirit somehow. Is not only Oriental, but also some European develop this kind of approach in front of art and in front of living. My compliments also for you for this extension of our presentation into extreme Orient tradition, and the way you accepted and take it in the European culture, because you're definitely a French person, lived and grew up in the French, as we know how complex and cultural are the French way of living. Forever was like this. French has a very strong cultural in Europe, and you made that. You were fascinated, and this is quite amazing for me personally. So I will stop here, saying again my congratulations for your presentation.
Please go ahead with the presentation of our next panelist.
Okay, first of all, I have to ask Radu and Alexandra if Radu is okay is prepared for making his presentation. So we have the last guest of tonight, of this second session, symposium of the artistic pole inside, in the context of the third International Congress of Transdisciplinarity. And he's again a Romanian. We start with the Romanian. It's just a situation on 20, and now we will finish this session with another Romanian artist. Radu Carnariu was born in 1979, and he's a Romanian multidisciplinary visual artist and art teacher from Iași, who graduated BA and MA and PhD at the same university, George Enescu National University of Arts. He's interested in the study of social, political, and cognitive effects caused by critical art on the relation between mentality, imagination, and behavior. Some of his projects as Draculax Plus, related with the famous character of Transylvania, definitely you catch it. Holy Advertising is another title of a project. Statementism, Boogeyman Generation, Eyes Wide Fat, or Argumented Reality, ironically highlights various contexts of these effects through paradoxical visual approaches in order to alter or provoke the common state of public awareness regarding the reality or the realities of our days. He had national solo shows in Iași and Bucharest, and international group exhibitions such as Art Revolution Taipei in Taiwan. He was a finalist in 2012, Nord Art in 2013, and Nord Art 2014, Kunstwerk Karlsruhe in Germany, and Contaminazione 016, European Cuteness Art 2016, Romania, Bulgaria, and Italy. Please, Radu, you have the microphone.
First of all, I want to congratulate all the panelists for their speeches and their presentations. Thank you, Christy, for introducing me in, and thanks for all the organizers for organizing this very special transdisciplinary event. My paper, which I want to share with you for today, is called Context of Transdisciplinary on Visual Communication. Just a moment. Okay. 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 Sorry for the little technical moment. Okay. So the paper is entitled Context of Transdisciplinarity in Visual Communication. Once Aldous Huxley stated, the more you see, the more you know. Visual communication means, in our days, almost everything. It marks all aspects of our individual and social life in this era of media convergence, as Martin Lester stated. As a field of study, visual communication is transdisciplinarity itself, so its constant tendency to unify various experience of knowledge towards a universal language. One of the forerunners of visual communication and graphic design, or infographics, Otto Neurath, Austrian philosopher of science and language, who declared once symptomatically that words divide, pictures unite, tried since the beginning of the 20th century to articulate an universal language of icons, essential for his complex conception of visual communication, known as isotype or International System of Typographic Picture Education, as a new dynamic communication tool of pictograms accompanied by relevant verbal elements. However, before we could analyze the cultural importance of visual communication in the context of our cognitive and social evolution, from prehistoric cave drawings to Banksy, for example, from Egyptian hieroglyphs to emoticons, it's another relevant example, it is necessary to review some emblematic empirical contributions on visual perception and their effects on later scientific, artistic, and design thinking, applied in what we are calling today visual culture and visual language. On visual sensing, it's the first sequence of the presentation. Since the beginning of the 20th century, Max Wertheimer, among other prominent collaborators, fostered a new complex multidisciplinary theory of perception known as Gestalt theory. Gestalt means form or emerging shapes, declaring in a holistic manner that the whole is more than the sum of its parts. Moreover, some later Gestalt theorists also stated that the whole is even more or something completely different than the sum of its parts. They were referring to the whole context of seeing or perceiving reality in terms of perception, cognition, and shape, pattern, configuration. This approach emphasizes the importance of researching the whole perceptual system. Gestalt theorists are generally stating that in the visual perception process, we naturally perceive patterns, configurations, or various organizations of visual elements, not the element itself. Taking into consideration that the visual environment or the context of seeing means that we perceive visuals or percepts in connection to environments or perceptual contexts, after we decode or recognize the perceptual context in terms of shape, color, position, and movement. In addition, there are some well-known and still available main Gestalt principles regarding the way we perceive the world of objects, such as proximity, similarity, continuity, closure, and connection. These basic Gestalt principles of visual perception demonstrates empirically relevant data about the whole perceptual mechanism of visual processing. It's very important to understand that before we talk about visual language or visual culture or visual imagination. Perception of shape, specifically the contour of objects, perception of movement, objects in relation with the visual sensors in various contexts of movement, perceptual illusions, how the brain reacts to visual paradoxes or misleading sensory visual data, and last but not least, the perceptual constancy, which refers to the ability of the brain to adjust itself, its decoding mechanism, in recognizing the same or identical objects in various contexts of seeing. Perception of shape, also known as form perception, refers to the visual recognition capacity of the sensory system to decode what we perceive during the visual process, from simple images to complex images. The Gestalt principle of reification refers, among others, to this capacity of the brain. Reification, known as constructive or generative characteristic of visual perception, means that the brain is capable to understand more aspects of a perceived image on less visual stimulus information. In the illustration, we could see how easy our brain recognizes the hidden geometrical shapes, the square and the triangle, in various contextual visual backgrounds. Another type of perceptual errors or motion perception is the perception of movement. In fact, this illustration is a two-dimensional illusion of a movement with a three-dimensional effect. This type of perception is a complex sensory process of recognizing various space-time relational contexts of seeing, and it depends on how the visual sensory system decodes the received sensory information when objects or the observer are or is moving. There is also artificially induced sensation of movement, such as the background, or motion illusion, known as apparent motion, in television or animation, for example, and its optical effects depends on the specific setup or display or array of stimulus in time or space in relation to the viewer's visual sensors. Perceptual illusions, that's my favorite because I'm a visual artist, refers to the brain capability of adjusting its sensory system when sensors are altered by various perceptual errors or visual paradoxes. Narrowing the explanation, perceptual illusion, or best known as optical or visual illusion, is in fact a percept which seems to appear different from reality, but in fact is not. A phenomenon which could be classified also in three categories: physical, physiological, and cognitive illusions. Physical illusion refers to various physical phenomena that trick the visual sensors during perception, such as, for example, the humidity and temperature of the air. The humidity of the air influences depth perception of the remote objects, which seem to appear closer than they really are to the viewer. But the temperature of the air is in fact the greatest illusionist of nature because it produces the most spectacular images, such as heat haze, heat shimmer, or mirage, which are atmospheric phenomena occurred when the thermal inversion of the warm-cold layers of the air form an atmospheric duct that produce a refracted image on the horizon. Is the lens effect, in fact, of this atmospheric duct. But there is more. Physiological illusions refers mainly to the overstimulation of the visual sensory system of the eye or brain. Metaphorically speaking, physiological illusion is a ghost image which persists for a short period of time after the end of an intense visual perception process or visual exposure. Commonly known as after images, these specific sensory phenomena are produced by exhausting the photopigment of the retinal cells, which leads to weakening or decreasing the sensory signals in the brain. After images are visual systems' temporary errors in processing signals from cones and rods of the eye. In the background, we could see how our eyes shimmers in search of a red dot and the white dot apparent dynamic. One of the most interesting illusions is the cognitive illusion, or as the German physicist Hermann Helmholtz stated in the 19th century, an unconscious inference. This type of illusion occurs when the visual memory of past visual perception interferes with an ambiguous visual stimulus during perception, and in response, the brain tends to fill the gaps by anticipating and projecting known figures. For example, when we gaze into the clouds and we recognize various shapes, faces, and so on. In other words, cognitive illusions are somehow visual negotiations between what we actually see and what we believe we recognize during the process of seeing when we meet unrecognizable figures. Cognitive illusion is a transitory conflict between seeing and knowing, between visual sensors and visual memory. A common phenomenon of this category of illusions is historically known as pareidolia, which means instead of a shape or instead of an image. Eidolon means in Greek, as we know, idol or image in a general sense, or a figure-like image. In the illustration, you can actually see how easy our brain scans and searches for relevant, recognizable figures, despite its natural, unrecognizable aspect. The brain decodes visual percepts using the simplest visual features or elements in an iconic manner. It's a natural thing. For example, when we draw a circle with two symmetrical dots and the curve, we instantly associate this abstract image with a happy or sad face. Moreover, there is a similarity in how the brain decodes visual experience for future adaptation in various contexts and the symbolization cognitive process by using various visual configurations, languages, or other cultural codes or visual representations. In addition, it is worth mentioning that the French modern painter Paul Cézanne, preoccupied among others with optical phenomena in relation to a more synthetic visual language, stated that the natural shapes or figures must be understood by simplifying them to their geometric essentials, to their ideal shapes, assertion pointing also to the Platonic solids, for example. He believed that it is more meaningful for visual understanding the world, quote, to treat natures in terms of the cylinder, the sphere, and the cone, end of quote. About pareidolia or image recognition illusion, there are other relevant results by studying this phenomena towards a better understanding of the human emotional functioning in relation to visually sensory system, memory, imagination, and behavior. The Rorschach test, for example, which consists in a set of ink blot cards, determines based on subject's visual projection or visual association response, the level of psychopathological tendencies of the subject's personality. Some of the most renowned artists that use cognitive illusion as a tool for depicting strange or intriguing images were, among others, Giuseppe Arcimboldo or Salvador Dalí. Finally, the last Gestalt principle of visual perception, called perceptual constancy, means that our perception system tends to adjust to the stimulus when we see identical objects or identical shapes, but in different visual relation with the background. In reality, the objects are constant in shape and color, but the sensation of these identical objects changes. As an effect, the brain, with its sensory mechanism, adjusts those changes or perception errors. All those well-known data are really relevant in the next context or the next sequence of my presentation, which is about visual meaning. For a better understanding of visual communication, it is necessary to understand the dynamics between perception, memory, and imagination in the process of cognition and meaning. On this basis, visual language as a cultural tool must be understood in the broader context of human mind or consciousness and analyzed, taking into consideration how the human psyche functions in relation to our need to make sense of the world as social beings when using various symbolic languages in different contexts of interaction or communication. As an historical example, we could say with the Bergsonian intuitionism and the beginnings of psychoanalysis or neuroscience, the human knowledge of the imagination process and its cognitive and creative importance in communication extended considerably today. Throughout history, from the magical or religious imagery of antiquity and dark ages to the modern phantasmic delirium of the surrealists or transpersonal archetypal mythologies of the fantastic realists, human imagination has never ceased to provoke human creativity in terms of knowledge, communication, or expression. Terminologically speaking, some specifications are still necessary. In order to deepen our subject about visual communication and its emotional, cognitive, and cultural efficiency, we have to correlate a series of distant or recent past notions or concepts that explain, based on various symbolical speculation or empirical facts, the structure of the human psyche and the imaginative process of thinking. Psychoanalytical concepts such as conscious, subconscious, preconscious, unconscious, and ego, self, or superego, as Sigmund Freud stated, still have a prominent influence on what is known as a genuine psychic automatism and free idiosyncratic associative state of visual language, historically in the surrealist imagery, and various spontaneous or experimental visual practice. Moreover, other psychoanalytical important concepts, such as collective unconscious or archetypes, as Jung stated, or transbiographical psyche, perinatal memory, transpersonal or extensive cartography of the psyche, as Stanislav Grof stated, or phantasmic trance or imaginative will, as Gaston Bachelard stated, aim to deepen the speculations on gaining awareness of latent capabilities of the mind, emphasizing by that the prominent cognitive role of active imagination. Considering that the image historically and physiologically precedes the word, imagination seems to be, as Bachelard concluded, the pre-rational stage of verbal thinking. Questioning the boundaries of language today, Paul Martin Lester prospects later in the article Urban Screens, a beginning of a visual universal culture, new relevant correlations between visual thinking and verbal thinking. He takes into consideration a wide spectrum of analytic perspectives regarding the complex relation between image, word, meaning, language, and communication, with a wide applicability, especially in contemporary mass media, and so on. His image analysis takes into account a personal or a subjective perspective, which it values the individual physiological, psychological, and cultural profile. Historical perspective. It analyzes the relation between image and media in time. A technical perspective. It's about the perception and the image in context of producing that image. Cultural perspective, which is about meaning and symbolization process. An ethical perspective, which refers to moral values and social behaviors, and at least the most important one for our times, a critical perspective. In other words, it is important to understand that due to the versatile background of interaction and communication in the contemporary digital age, visual communication also benefits from a true visual deontology. I want to share with you an experiment, a more practical one, an experiment entitled Selective History. It's an ongoing experiment which I work in a deep and very provocative collaboration with one of my favorite designers, Alexandra. This current art experiment aims to create a dynamic critical archive based on the concept of fake, altered, or personal collective memory or biography, and the connection between the user and social media platforms such as the renowned platform, which we use daily. The project questions the way we relate and interact to information in the context of social media narratives and strives to understand the cultural relevance of what we remember from the informational gazing. Imagined as a playful, visual, textual dystopia, the project converts the utilitarian function of social media platform into a collective or individual creative experimental process by reusing the social media imagery as an artistic tool or medium, or even considering it a provocative public virtual space for art intervention and production. The project aims to deepen the understanding of the connection between images, emotions versus text information and behaviors or mentalities within the framework of social media's collective imaginary, and focuses on how the user translates reactions or emotions as passive elements into thoughts or critical thinking as active components toward a more synergic creative process. This is the first sequence of the project. It's a digital collage. There are displayed chronologically various headlines captured in real time from Facebook. The users capture or print screen headlines that appear during scrolling on a user's wall. That's the content depends on the profile of the user. Then the next stage, select and crop the headlines and information that they desire using a simple free software in a chronological order. And the final image is a digital collage with the selected images working along with a software of their choice. The next step is selecting the important titles, keeping in mind that the previous selected images are not relevant in this stage. It's important to try not to interfere with the actual process of capturing those information. Next step is highlighting the relevant text that is suitable for the final post-digital literary reconstruction. In fact, it's a form of text art based from information, from visual information to image, and then from image to text. The background is removed, keeping only the resulted text. It looks weird, like a broken collage, but the next step is in fact the provocative one. I call it text extraction. The text is copied or edited, avoiding, if possible, any intervention or rephrasing, and is saved as a post-digital poetical artifact. The result is intriguing, paradoxical, almost in the classical manner of Dadaists, of Surrealists. We know from history their method of combining, associating various text or image. I think in French it's called cadavre-esque method, which was used by the first Dadaists. And the result is somehow a strange literary artifact. I don't think it's necessary to read it. The main idea was that from this point, we could recreate new visual associations in one hand, or more than that, we could repost on the same social media platform the whole process and the result, and invite other users to make or to reiterate this process. It has a critical effect on what Isa Raskin, on one of the former creators of Facebook, stated when he used the expression, the infinite gazing of the scroll, or the million of hours spent on Facebook with a perpetual movement by scrolling. The important and the ironical gesture in a more synergic collective approach on this kind of visual art-based interventions on various communication platforms could actually disrupt, alter, or transgress the main function of this social interaction tool. It tells us more about how we could really get something more profound on this virtual infinite gazing And one of our possible solutions was, and is still, a form of new poetical associations. So, thank you. I hope I was not specifically clear, but intriguing.
Thank you very much, Radu, for your interesting and provocative and actual as subject communication you offer us, and which remind us the nature of time we live and how many hours we use to scroll. All of us, we have social media, and we have to have social media. I personally, as you did, definitely use various social media, especially the F1 you evoke as tool for working with my students. And definitely I have more than 3,000 members, and I encountered all kind of posts and messages and aggressions and beautiful things in the same time. For everybody happens, and I use as I said, as a tool. So I push it into the positive area of knowledge, and I encounter all types of problems, of visual problems and cognitive problems you evoke, which are specific for us, the visuals, for the familiar somehow, not in the way you treat it very scientifically. And of course, we met with all these problems in our practices, but you make a passion of that, and the subject of research, and this is very interesting. But of course, all of us, we encountered that we are in front of this sort of illusions, this sort of temptations, and we are catched in this situation created deliberately or by case by different people on this world. Everybody is free on this social media to say and to post everything, and we can, as you mentioned, we can make somehow a portrait of the people we encounter in these social media platforms, and to especially with the person we know, we can complete and enlarge and develop the psychological profile of the people we know, just watching the posts or the comments or the preferences of somebody or the colors of his posts, or all these details, visual details and psychological details and so on. So it's a very complicated and fascinating game, and it's one of the signs of this time spirit of our age, definitely, this way of communication. And what we do now, of course, is a self-portrait of every one of us, the subject we present, the way we present, and the points, the elements we emphasize, and so on. So I think your communication, your data are really fascinating and necessary and useful and beautiful, and we have to deal with all that and to use in a positive way, and to in a conscious way to send our good message. And it's also a sign of the transdisciplinary spirit which define our time, our age, the interaction and crossing of all these streets of psychology, of visual communication, of spirituality, of barbarism, new form of barbarism we have to manage and to encounter in our processes of communication and learning and teaching and so on. So in this way is definitely a beautiful possibility what we have these days and which will follow in this Congress of Transdisciplinarity, to see and to hear beautiful ideas and conceptions about reality, from the ancient time as it happens to present, and also to take a look in the future, we can say, and to imagine how the world will be. And this is absolutely amazing. And I confess that, and I'm sure I'm in resonance with your feelings, that I'm happy to be present here. So, do you think, short question, Radu, these methods will be again more and more complex? We will assist to constant and more amplified aggression for our psyche on this on the direction you presented us. So we have to be prepared for that.
Not necessarily. There are many aspects of this type of communication in social media platforms. It's not only the aggression in terms of comments or reaction. From this perspective, yes, we tend to react more and think less. We tend to lose our capabilities of interpret or compare things in a various contexts of communication in social media. Also, all this infinite gaze, or I like to use the expression falling in scroll, tends to reduce our senses, both physical and inner senses. We not relate specifically with a specific information, visual, textual, or a story of somehow or someone, but the aggression is in fact only at our individual levels. It's the aggression of our false expectations regarding this medium. Because yes, we project ourselves using beautified avatars of ourselves. We don't post image where our apparent configurations are intriguing or even ugly. We used to idealize this context, but also beyond the aggressive contents, which are debatable and easy to recognize today, there is a hidden aggression which is in my concern, which could be, in a few words, expressed as our transitory identity or fake identity when using those platforms. So this little experiment that I was talking about in my presentation, it's beyond its ironic framework or methodology, is more like a gesture of disrupting this way of relating to social media platforms. It's also a transgression, another type of aggressivity, but I like to call it positive aggressivity, because when you turn or transform the usual function of something into a more meaningful context for communication, or at least for critical thinking, because we speak about critical thinking all day long, but we are less critical in the proper sense of the word. So this tells us much more about our shadows than the shadows of the others.
Thank you. Yeah, good and nice and complex. You answer, but we have to continue your answer as yeah, as everybody want to do. But I am curious, Amalia, from I think it's very anthropological subject of Radu. What is your opinion and what he present about this visual complexity of today's media, digital media, and the good things and the dangers maybe we have to encounter, not in front of us, but maybe subliminal and so on. What happens, what will happen with people of today or of tomorrow, the proximal tomorrow? Please, Amalia.
Well, I would like to read some comments because before we miss them from here from the other platform, and it says no from our peer Juliet here present. She wants to comment that we are in a post-visual world, which means that digital obligates us to new visualities, new codes of perception, such as illusion and other processes, no? Which is very much like what you've been saying. So that's her comment, and we are inviting you to dialogue more here, Adrian, Margarita, Alexandra, and all everybody, so that you can give us your impressions on these, because remember we're in a round table, even though we have our round table, no? But let's try to make it more.
Actually, we are in a symposium now.
I would like to. Yes, well, from my point of view as educator, what you point out, Ranu, is essential nowadays. As you said, we are less and less critical in a way, in a real way, how to learn. And as you said, we are losing our capacity to compare, to have a real perception, and to construct and to abstract, to have this capacity to abstraction. And I work with Britt Marie Barth, and she is she had created a method so to just develop this capacity to abstraction, because it's a real process. And the most important thing is the social cognitivism, because she has an approach that where in the class or wherever there's a method so that you can co-construct the concept from the perception, the subjective perception of each element in the class. And everything you just accept everything, and little by little, by comparison with a contrast, the sense emerge, and it's a consensus. It's a consensus, but you learn to dialogue with the other, to co-construct, and this it's a real, it's very important for our time. Yes, it's really to develop a transdisciplinary thought. So I don't know if you have something to say about education.
If some other panelists want to express a comment or a question regarding Radu presentation, or some previous presentation, please.
I was
okay, bravo.
Yes, I was meditating at the last words of Radu. Really profound. the comparison with the shadows of each one is really profound. Indeed, this technological era marks a very interesting period for us. Our times are difficult, this sense of in this way, because we have to find some solutions to communicate well. Even we have the technology and we can use the technology, that technology will not replace the connection, the real connection between us. So, because we're speaking about transdisciplinarity for the future, I think it is very important to find the possibilities and the ways to interact more, and to interact. I think it was not possible. It would not be possible to have such a congress, such a meeting without technology. But it's very important to meet the next time, because related to what Margherita said before, there is a precognition. There is a sense. There are some senses which we can feel. It's not only by information, it's not only by education, it's the real interaction between people. So I want to congratulate all of you, because staying here with you this today, I learned a lot. I have to confess that I learned a lot, very, very, very interesting information from each one of you. And I think, in fact, this is the sense of transdisciplinarity, to change experiences, to learn from each other, and to give what we have best in ourselves and to share. So I have to thank you, all of you.
Thank you, Adrian. Thank you. Beautiful synthesis and beautiful words you offer us. Somehow as a conclusion, and we have it all inside of our souls and our minds and our consciousness, this feeling of sharing and learning new things, and as you said, is the nucleus of transdisciplinarity. And especially if you let me continue a little bit your idea, as the manifesto said, is not about sharing, then we will stay in the same level of reality, which is really important to share and to get new information and to put together from the four territories of knowledge, from science, theology, philosophy, and art. But the idea is to feel it, as you evoke Margarita said, to feel, to have this sense of a new platform. As Basarab Nicolescu theorized in the manifesto, it's a new platform, different of these four, which are staying into, including theology, are staying into our level of reality, generate a new platform which is completely new, and push our consciousness to a new level. And we hope to have a positive one. And I have the same conception as you said, as Margarita and Alexandra in his way, and all of us, we have a lot of confluence in our ideas and presentations. So that life is a school, existence here. I should not say life, because life is alive. Life is always, and life is changing. And that is one of the changings of life. So life is always alive. Okay, so, but having an episode here is like having a class somewhere. This is very theological, metaphysical, but we have the context to express also these kind of ideas. And if we get it, if we get the good credit, we'll pass to the next class, and we'll take the luggage of information with us, and we'll encounter with new category of more complex and more subtle as vibration, definitely to come back to the term of energy, and not only information but also with energy, this is the process, and we are the lucky human beings to live a very accelerated process of changings in our level here. So 30 years ago, we remember how simple somehow was the life and the way of communicating with Nokia, and before Nokia was again more simple, and sometimes brutal, will say the kids of today, which didn't met the telephone with the disc and a telephone on street with coins and things like that, and the only way, and for them it should be like how they live that time, how they communicate, how they work that time without having mobile. And they communicate, we remember 1 or 3 days, 4 days, we see next week, this day, at this hour, and was enough. And now we have such a complicated system of fixing interactions and communicating and so on. But this is amazing, and because we are in front of such a complicated situation, and migrations and cultural exchanges and all that dynamics of the world we live in. But we don't have to forget, I think, the basics of our culture, specific culture, and in an international world culture, the pillars, the fundamentals of our humanity and our divine model, I should say, because it's something which is constant in time, and we can catch these elements of being, and some are forgotten, and we have to find it in the dust, in the dirt, as Margarita evoked this sense of connection without words, just watching a movement of somebody, or watching ourselves during a process of saying something or doing something rational with this machine of brain, which is no more than a machine, and is just a function of a level of our full being. And we have also, after the intellectual, the mind level, we have the heart level, and then we have the locomotorial level. I used to say a lot this example because it's very beautiful. We know how we learn to drive a car using mind level, which is slow and quite stupid. Somebody will say you are stupid, don't speak for the others. Where is the speed, gas, I change now, scared and so on. After we pass to locomotory system, which is a lot more quick than this one, is quick even than the anima, the heart level. And we can speak at the phone and, okay, darling, I will come, and we drive the car without problem. We are on locomotive, and we have the vegetative one, which is speeder again, which regard the inner organs. And so this is the beauty of knowledge, of transdisciplinary logic, to interact and to connect this particular, strange, specific as visual elements you present us, or the quite esoteric for somebody, but are natural also, a way of communicating through individuals, through human beings, watching gesture, or trying to feel the energy of somebody else in the same space, in the same room, and so on, which can give us more information and deep information than a normal communication, word communication, and so on, based on rules, on classic rules, on fear and false respect and so on. Stay there, listen. Why you don't pay attention and so on. We have to meditate on all this, or as Alexandra said, the sense of relation with objects we generate. And why we generate? Because the consumerism push us to have more and more, and to consume and to buy and so on. But humanity developed philosophy of objects and a special relation with the objects, and not necessarily functional and so on. And things are going together, as I said in Alexandra's after Alexandra's talk, into this field of we will have again a design of communication, a design of environmental in general, and design of beauty, a design of feeling somehow. Anyway, it's quick dynamics and complex, and we have to manage with that. And these kind of encounters are really great. And again, thanks to organizers. And as Adrian said, we hope to experiment in and to make then to compare. To meet in Mexico City, and to have the great experience of meeting the culture of Mexico, and the complexity of such a great metropolis. A metropolis of Mexico, which will give us a different dimension of the Congress. But of course, now regarding the feedback we had on internet after 20, and we will have also now, it's extraordinary what is happened. Please, Amalia, thank you very much for this talk. You didn't stop me. Amalia, please, if you have questions for Radu.
Just two more comments. How fascinating. Well, somebody thinks, well, it's more than thinking. They say that our brains are changing, but our core being is not. And then there's a last question that I don't know if we're going to have enough of time, but it says that how much does digitalization are leading us to the decomposition of the person in its being? No, like how are we losing some essence of some essential parts of a being, no, by being more digitalized, especially if you become an avatar or invisible. So this would be it. And we have some, yes. Give me just 1 second. So afterwards, we need to give you some information. So don't disconnect. But we have a few more minutes to start closing, please.
Yes. Please, Radu.
Yes, that's a very, very hard question. It raises many perspectives about the future, about the near future. About the very near future. There are a lot of dystopic scenarios on the relation between human in a post-humanistic approach with technology. I personally don't think that we really lose something when we relate to our technology by losing our natural equilibrium. It's about emotion and time, inner sense of time, when we relate it to this alternate reality on new technologies. Specifically, it's about virtual reality in the technical sense, because I believe, as the old Indians believed, that our reality, our way in relating the concept of reality is also illusory, or an illusion, or Maya, such Hindu stated. But referring to the question, there are many possibilities. On the first hand, we must emphasize that the technological leap have has to be oriented in general global issues, stringent issues, such as regaining harmony with nature, fostering new ways on health problems, and so on and so forth. But as we learn from various periods in our history, when a technological leap occurs, there are many conflicts and social, political, maybe economical vexations and conflicts. The main fear regarding this subject is that we will become some sort of post-being, such as the Borg from Star Trek. This is the cyborgic dystopic perspective. Another fear is that we will cease to be assertive. This is the actual one that I'm thinking of daily, in relation to others, but also in relation to ourselves. The fear of losing our actual minds in relation with, for example, augmented reality, virtual reality, enhanced reality, and so on. And by losing all those natural senses, our way of thinking about the concept of identity, personality, or the connection between individuals as families or societies radically changes. In fact, it's about what humanism could be in the near future beyond its post-humanist possible somehow extinction. I do not believe in apocalyptical fears or apocalyptical scenarios. It's up to us when using a knife, for example, metaphorically speaking, if that we cut the bread into or we injure a person. It's not the technology itself the problem, but our complex relation with it and our, of course, basic intention on it. Of course, some will use technology to gain more power. It's an actual, natural, basic, primitive way of acting as mammals, but we are more than mammals. So our technological leap, it has and it could be leading us to various paradoxical scenarios. Of course, this tendency on raising awareness of possible dystopic scenarios, we have seen always, for example, Black Mirrors, the series. We have read 1984 or of Orwell's. In my mind appears Fahrenheit 451 of Ray Bradbury, which actually depicts a dystopic parallel society when books and traditional culture is forbidden. It's really hard to foster clearly an insightful meaning of the possible future. There are many alternate possibilities of improving ourselves with aid of technology or not. But this improvement depends on the both epistemological and ontological way of relating to its meanings, to its actual meanings, not only the traditional meanings of technology. Depends on the context of interpreting all those relational contexts, because, and with that I would like to sketch a possible conclusion on that matter. Is that, and I remember the movie Transcendence, which was Christian stating about a few minutes ago. The main fear is that, in fact, the artificial intelligence will become the next species in the top of the Earth ecosystem.
It's a possible scenario, Rado, definitely. And it's not new. And if you allowed me, please finish. And after that, I feel the need to say 2 words also, please.
But artificial intelligence could not still emulate or mimic emotions. It could be programmed. Let's not forget that from the strictly intellectual point of view, and by this I'm referring to the intelligence quotient or IQ, we are already broken by artificial intelligence since almost 3 decades ago for specific tasks, playing chess, for example. The problem of post-humanity is how we redefine humanity and how we rediscover our natural links with the whole system of life on Earth, of course, and how we, in parallel, broaden our transpersonal consciousness, because it's a matter of being more aware, both in cognitive and in other more subtle ways than cognition or sensation or perception or active imagination. It's about rediscovering a deep state of being, and then we'll not be so frightened by our very extraordinary and without any other precedents in history in terms of technological leaps.
Thank you, Rado. Thank you. We will discover definitely, and we will manage the situation, because we are very creative beings, and we are in visit here, definitely in this constant battlefield. But we have to close our session of tonight, and I wish to thank you again, the organizers, first of all, made great efforts to have this congress, virtual congress, and definitely they will continue. And if our hopes, general hopes, will fulfill, we'll have the normal life, will be healthy as planet, and we will have the possibility to travel, then we will meet again face to face, and we'll develop this. So thanks to organizers, and thanks to all artists and transdisciplinary researchers who accept the invitation. My invitation as coordinator of Artistic Pole. And again, as you said, all of you pointed out, we are happy to have this experience, to learn from each other and to communicate to many other people who follow us. We thank them also if they spend their time to watch us and to listen us, and we hope also to inspire them as we inspire each other having this communication. Thank you very much, and see you at the next event of this type. And maybe, God help us, till then we have to watch and listen the other poll, thematic poll of the Congress. We have literature, we have different, and we'll keep in touch. I will send you the full program schedule of the Congress, virtual Congress, and we hope deeply to meet in Mexico, fascinating city of Mexico City, and to visit the beautiful places we expect to see there. Thank you very much.
Yes, and well, we also want to thank you all for participating, and in behalf of the Third Congress of Transdisciplinary Studies, we and the National Institute of Anthropology and History, we thank you, and we invite you to be here again next Wednesday, the 27th at 10 a.m. for our next panel, starting with the subject Sciences for the 21st Century. Organized by CTU from Italy. So thank you all, and see you next. See you in the next panel. Bye bye. Ciao.